Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto returns with his wife but Tsunade refused to accept them. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Oi, Ba-chan, what's going on? Is it a mission? Naruto could barely conceal his excitement at the prospect of being sent out on another mission, hopefully a B class or higher. Kami knew he could use the money as well as the distraction. But as his eager blue eyes continued staring down at the busty blonde in front of him, Naruto's excitement began fading, because the look on Tsunade's face wasn't anything he'd seen before. Normally, by now, the Hokage would be yelling at him to sit down and shut the hell up. At the very least, she'd have scolded him for calling her Ba-chan. Scrunching up his face, Naruto shifted on his feet. Ba-chan? Naruto, would you like to sit down? Damn, now he knew something was wrong. The old hag was never this nice. Giving his biggest grin, Naruto squashed the unease settling into his gut. Oh, come on, it can't be that bad. And, he truly believed that. After all, the Akatsuki were all but destroyed, the village was safe, and the Teme was back where he belonged. As long as those three things were still correct, whatever Tsunade had to say really couldn't be that dire. So, you don't want to sit? Naruto huffed. No, I've always done better on my feet. Tsunade shrugged, still staring down at the official request form in her hands, although, she supposed calling it a request was being kind. Really, it was nothing short of an order. She'd been staring at it all night, but not even the tick of the clock changed what it said. Nor did it change the unmistakable handwriting inked on the page. Sighing, Tsunade wondered if she'd still have an office left 10 minutes from now. Naruto, I've had a request. Rubbing the end of his nose, Naruto questioned, a request? For what? Tsunade placed her chin in her hand. It's an official request made by a member of one of the Leaf Village's oldest and most treasured clans. By law, it is not something I can dismiss nor deny. And it is not something you can refuse. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, his blue eyes confused. He couldn't imagine what any of this could have to do with him. As far as he was concerned, he hadn't had any direct interaction with anyone that important in months. Well, excluding the Teme. I mean, he might be the last of the Uchihas, but that clan name was about as old and weighty as it got. But if Sasuke wanted something, he'd have asked, not sent an official request, thus bringing him back to his original state of confusion. So what does that have to do with me? Tsunade reached for her glass of sake, only to find it empty. Cursing under her breath, she lamented the fact that what she was about to say would need to be done without the benefit of liquid courage. Naruto, the request is one of marriage. Marriage? To who? Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke? Who wants to marry that Teme? Tsunade couldn't stop the palm of her hand as it flew up, smacking against her forehead. Kami, Naruto really could be an idiot. Brat, it's not a request for Sasuke's hand in marriage, but yours. Huh? A low growl emanated from deep in Tsunade's chest. Moron, the request came from Sasuke, he's asking permission to marry you. Slowly, comprehension began dawning. First the color drained from Naruto's face, his jaw gaping open like a fish. But as the wheels of his rusty brain began turning, he came to the only conclusion his past experiences with the bastard could lead him to, and with this thought, color began returning to his cheeks at lightning speed. Soon, a violent red chakra was taking over the room. That bastard. Naruto. What the fuck kind of joke is this? His games have gone too far. Naruto, I think he's Esser. The growl coming from Naruto put Tsunade's earlier one to shame. He's not getting away with this. I'll make him pay for making fun of me. Tsunade stood from behind her desk. This was exactly what she'd been afraid would happen. Naruto was beyond listening to reason. She could tell him all she wanted that she didn't think this was a joke, far from it. Uchiha Sasuke had been completely serious last night when he'd officially filed his request. And, as she'd already stated, since the request came from one of their most valued clans, she could not refuse, nor deny it, and neither could the brat. Naruto, calm down. Like hell. Where the fuck is he? What? Never mind. I'll find him. And with that, Naruto rushed from her office, leaving the doors hanging precariously from their twisted hinges. Uchiha Sasuke sat at his kitchen counter, calmly drinking a cup of tea while periodically glancing at a nearby clock. By all rights, he should be anything but calm, but getting anxious over his Dobi's impending visit was beyond pointless. He'd made his decision and that was that. Of course, he'd had a little help coming to said decision. Help in the way of too much unwanted attention thrown at his Dobby over the past few weeks. Of course, said blonde was completely oblivious to the looks and poorly disguised innuendos coming from both men and women. But Uchiha Sasuke was not so blind, and when a certain dark-haired, pale-skinned artist by the name of Sai maneuvered himself into, accidentally, grabbing Naruto's ass 2 days ago. Well, Sasuke had gone from getting gently nudged to being pushed over the proverbial cliff. This was, after all, his blonde Dobby they were talking about. It was past time for Sasuke to stake his claim, which was exactly what he'd done last night. Sneaking yet another look at the clock, Sasuke figured Naruto should be busting through his door any minute. Tsunade had said she'd speak with the blonde first thing this morning, and Sasuke had no illusions as to what Naruto's reaction would be, not that he could say he'd really blame him. A sudden wave of fierce chakra assaulted Sasuke's senses, and it was moving fast. Sitting up straighter, he couldn't help but swallow the knot of saliva forcing its way down his suddenly dry throat. He'd known Naruto would be pissed, but this was beyond what he'd anticipated. There was no mistaking this chakra signature, and it was far from Naruto's normal warm blue hue. Shit, was all Sasuke had time to say before the front door of his home was thrown into the living room. Sasuke, you fucking bastard, where the hell are you? Sasuke didn't bother responding. The kitchen was right off the living room, and by now, Naruto was already facing him, his blue eyes having long ago faded to bloody red. Narrowing his black eyes down to slits, Sasuke braced himself as a very feral-looking Naruto launched towards him, grabbing the Uchiha around the neck, lifting him off his chair and slamming him into the kitchen cabinets. Stifling a painful groan, Sasuke tried twisting enough to get one of the cabinet doorknobs out of the middle of his back. Staring into Naruto's slitted pupils, Sasuke could feel the Kyuubi's hot breath pushing across his face, its elongated fangs dripping saliva as its claws dug mercilessly into Sasuke's unprotected neck. He was staring his death in the face and knew he had to act quickly. "Dobby, are you really this weak?" Sasuke managed to whisper through his partially crushed trachea. Sasuke's sarcastic dig did exactly what he wanted. It made the still-functioning part of Naruto's brain stop and think. "What are you talking about?" Naruto growled. "Idiot, your Kyuubi's showing." The hushed response hit its target perfectly, and Sasuke watched in mild fascination as the fangs retreated and Naruto's eyes eased back from red to magenta and finally the obscenely bright blue he loved so much. Blinking rapidly, Naruto stood back, releasing Sasuke's neck, letting the pale-skinned man place his feet firmly onto the ground. Looking down at his hands, Naruto dumbly stared at the traces of blood under his fingernails, finally glancing back up to see the claw marks on Sasuke's neck, along with their individual crimson trails slowly leaking ever downward. Despite their obvious presence, Sasuke refused to acknowledge the injury, not even allowing his hand to come up and inspect the damage. Gulping loudly, Naruto backed out of the kitchen and into the living room, only stopping when his foot hit the back of the couch. Sasuke, I mean. Naruto looked from Sasuke, back to the sun shining through the open doorway, which was wrong because there should be a door there to block out the sun. But instead of hanging up where it should, the thing was laying on the floor, and that was just not right. Are you okay? Did I hurt you? Sasuke didn't like the worried look on Naruto's face, but he absolutely detested the guilt lacing it even more. "Dobby, as if you could ever hurt me." A flash of anger quickly replaced any feelings of regret. "Bastard, it's all your fault anyway." Sasuke crossed his arms over his chest, raising a single eyebrow as he tried to ignore the stinging pain in his back and neck. "Really? How so? Don't try and play smart with me. You know damn well what you did." "Oh, I don't have to play at being smart, Naruto. That's your department." Naruto grabbed his hair, pulling the blonde strands in frustration. "Gah, why do you have to be such an ass all the time? You know I can be smart. When? I am so going to kick your ass. As I said earlier, you couldn't hurt me if you tried." Balling his hands into small fists, Naruto was just about to jump across the counter and tackle his rival once again, but the continually leaking wounds on Sasuke's neck reminded him just how dangerous his anger could become, and despite how pissed he was with the Teme, he didn't really want to murder Sasuke. Trying to rein in his feelings, Naruto placed his hands on his hips, turning his back on endless black eyes as he stared around the Uchiha's depressing home. The large living room he was standing in should have seemed open and airy, but it only felt stale. With the heavy curtains tightly pulled across each and every window, the only natural air and sunlight entering the room was through the gaping hole left where the door should be. Continuing to distract himself, Naruto started walking towards the windows, a new mission forming in his head. It's no wonder you're so crabby all the time. You practically live in a cave. Reaching up, he roughly grabbed the closest set of curtains, pulling the dusty fabric back and throwing open the window. Naruto, Sasuke's voice low and threatening. What do you think you're doing? You need to lighten up, literally, he answered while heading to the next window. I happen to like the dark. Yeah? Well, I happen to like kicking your ass, but I don't get to do that nearly as often as I'd like. What the hell's that supposed to mean? Naruto rolled his eyes. It means we don't always get what we want. I'm here and I say this room needs aired out. Deal with it. Sasuke's irritation was rapidly being replaced by something else. As the warm rays of the sun filtered into his home, he stared at the back of his blonde friend's head. This was why he'd made the request. Why he wanted Naruto to be his and no one else's. Why he needed the idiot. Anyone else would have stopped what they were doing as soon as they heard the anger in Sasuke's voice. Anyone else would have been too scared to disobey him. But not Naruto. No, Naruto gave Sasuke what he needed, not what he wanted. With the final window open and glistening in the unrelenting sun, Naruto turned to his supposed friend. By now, he thought he had his anger under control enough to get to the point of this visit. Bastard, this time you've gone too far. Uncrossing his arms, Sasuke calmly walked around the counter, coming to stand in almost the very spot Naruto was gracing just a few minutes before. Exactly what have I gone too far with this time? Naruto felt the color rising to his cheeks and worked to squash the irritation. Are you really going to make me say it? Yes. Gritting his teeth, Naruto stared unbelievingly at the last Uchiha. Did you, or did you not, make a formal request to the old hag asking that we be allowed to marry? Naruto leaned back on his heels. He'd made it perfectly clear. There was no way the bastard could get out of giving a straight answer. But Sasuke had no intention of trying to deny anything and simply shrugged his shoulders as he answered a simple, yes. For the second time that morning, Naruto's jaw gapped. Why in the hell would you do something like that? Then, narrowing his eyes, he pointed an accusing finger at his friend. You think this is funny? Are you that desperate for a laugh? Or, are you still trying to get me killed? Because once those fangirls of yours get a whiff of this, I'm gonna constantly be running for my life. Sasuke knew Naruto would think he had some kind of ulterior motive behind this, but the last one took him by surprise. To answer your questions, no, I do not think this is funny, and no, I am not that desperate for a laugh. And, if I still wanted you dead, you wouldn't be standing in my living room right now. Sasuke stared into Naruto's skeptical blue orbs and finally asked, why do you think this is a joke? Naruto gave a quick, barking laugh. Why wouldn't it be? You've made it pretty clear what you think of me. Sasuke's eyebrows went up slightly, thinking this might be more entertaining than he'd originally thought. Really? Maybe you should enlighten me. Naruto stared, incredulous. But if the Teme wanted a list of reasons, he'd be happy to oblige. You think I'm an idiot? True. I'm obnoxious. Right again. I'm loud. 3 for 3. I irritate the hell out of you. Most assuredly. Naruto huffed. See Teme, those are hardly endearing traits. Sasuke shrugged. Depends on who you're trying to endear yourself. By now, Naruto had turned his body away from Sasuke, only shifting his eyes to stare into his bored face, trying in vain to find anything in his facial expression that would allow him to figure out what in the hell was going on. But as USAL, Sasuke wore a blank mask. Finally shaking his head, Naruto began walking towards the doorway. He wasn't about to apologize for the busted frame, and if Sasuke even thought about asking him to pay for it, then the bastard would have a permanent hole in his house. Whatever. I'm tired of trying to figure you out. Just tell Tsunade you're revoking your request and we'll forget it happened. No. Naruto stopped mid-stride. He'd almost made it to the open doorway. What? Why the hell not? Because, I don't want to. Teme, that's not a reason. Working hard to slow his stampeding heart, Sasuke began walking towards his blonde target, keeping his eyes locked with Naruto's as he spoke. Did you ever stop to think I was serious? Naruto looked genuinely confused. No, why would I? Because, moron, that's exactly what I am. Naruto furrowed his brow. But you can't be. Why? You know perfectly well Uchihas don't joke around. Not about something like this. But, I mean, I think we just established that you don't even like me. No, we didn't. You simply gave a true assessment of some of your more colorful attributes and assumed I didn't like them. I don't understand. That's obvious. By now, Sasuke was mere inches away from Naruto as he continued to hold his gaze even. All he wanted to do was reach out and run his hand down the blonde's scarred cheeks, but it was too soon. He'd never see the gesture as it was meant. Sasuke, maybe, for now, you shouldn't try and understand it. Huh? Sasuke sighed. He was going to have to approach this differently. Naruto, promise to go out on a date with me. What? You heard me. You want to know why I'm doing this? Well, there's no better way to find out than that. Give me a chance and I'll do everything I can to make you understand what this is about. Naruto placed his hands behind his head, leaning back on his heels as he continued to dubiously stare at the raven-haired man in front of him. I don't know. I'll pay. Immediately, Naruto's ears perked up. You'll buy me ramen? Sasuke's eyes narrowed. If that's what you really want. I'm sure they sell that junk food at Shugida's too. Shugida's? That's the fanciest place in Konoha. Why would you want to go there? Dobi, have you ever even been to Shugida's? Slowly, Naruto shook his head. As if I could afford something like that. Well, now you can see what it looks like inside and not have to worry about the bill. Looking off to his side, Naruto began wringing his hands. It was a nervous gesture, one he'd never admit doing. I don't know. I don't have anything suitable to wear. What are you now? A girl? Shut up, Teme. I'm not a girl, and in case you don't remember, you're the one acting like I am. What with this whole stupid marriage thing and all? It's legal for two men to marry in the leaf, Sasuke said matter-of-factly. Gah, stop saying things like that. Naruto was near to pulling his hair out again. I'll stop if you agree to have dinner with me tomorrow at Shugida's. Naruto stared at the floor, unsure what to say. On the one hand, when was he ever going to get an opportunity like this again? There was no way in hell he could ever afford to eat somewhere like Shugida's. And, he supposed he could put up with all this nonsense about marrying the Teme for a free meal there. On the other hand, there was the not-so-simple matter of who he was. Would they even let him? Who would have thought you'd be this scared? Sasuke interrupted Naruto's thoughts, his voice taunting. Instantly, Naruto's head shot up. Who said I was scared? It's fairly obvious. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Fine, I promise, just tell me what time to be there. Inwardly, Sasuke beamed at his success. Outwardly, he only smirked. I'll come and get you tomorrow at 7. Fine bastard. Just don't be late. And, I'll have you know I plan on eating until I explode, so bring plenty of cash. Sasuke shoved his hands in his pockets, his smirk threatening to become a full-blown smile as Naruto walked out of his house, only to stop and curse on the front step. Forget something? With hands on hips, Naruto turned, his cheeks a fiery red. No, I just remembered I still don't have anything fancy enough to wear. I'll take care of it. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I'll take care of it. Teme, you'll see tomorrow. Now, get off my property. Sasuke watched Naruto turn back around, all the while spewing barely intelligible insults regarding ungrateful bastards and ice-cold assholes. Once his blonde head of hair could no longer be seen, Sasuke headed back into his house, giving his busted doorframe a cursory glance before making a mental note to contact someone to fix it, immediately. Sitting down on his couch, Sasuke left the windows and curtains open, enjoying the warm breeze and sunlight illuminating the space. Naruto was right, it was time to stop sitting in the dark and reach for the light, which was exactly what he was doing. Now, if only he could get his blonde Dobi to see it that way. Climbing the stairs to his bedroom, Sasuke grabbed his wallet. Heading for town, he had 3 missions. 1. Find someone to fix his house. 2. Shop for clothes for his Dobi. And, 3. Make reservations at Shugida's. It was going to be a full day. Anywho, since you were all so very nice, I decided to give you another chapter. Hopefully, I'll give you 1 or 2 more tomorrow as they're already written. I just have to upload them. A word of caution, I don't have a beta, so I'm sure there'll be mistakes. But hey, I'm not perfect, so don't expect my writing to be either. Hopefully the mistakes won't detract from the overall story. Another word of caution. This story will eventually contain citrus, but it won't be until the end. There will be some nice moments of implied tension, but not the actual deed, at least, not for a while. Disclaimer. As stated before, I do not own Naruto, nor do I make any money off of this fiction. And, although that generally makes me sad, I'm glad I don't own Mato Guy. Not that I don't enjoy his character, for all those Guy Sensei fans out there. I just don't think I'd want to own him. Now, on with the story. Naruto spent most of the following day training, pushing his body to the breaking point in an effort to try and get the last 24 hours out of his head. Last night, falling asleep was something he could only dream about, and the breaking of dawn found him already dressed and heading into the woods. By midday, he thought he'd finally tired himself enough to get in a small nap before tonight's outing. Walking back through the village, he missed the shot of pink hair floating towards him. Naruto. Hey, Naruto, wait up. Turning, Naruto found Sakura's aqua-colored eyes staring cautiously into his own. Placing his hands behind his head, he gave her his widest grin. Oi, Sakura-chan, how are you doing? Sakura placed hands on hips, giving her friend a contemplative once-over. Naruto, what have you been up to? I didn't think you were scheduled for any missions. I'm not. Then why do you look so run down? Placing her hands out in front of her, Sakura used her medical training to briefly assess Naruto's physical well-being. Damn it, Naruto. Your chakra's near to exhaustion. Then, narrowing her eyes, she accused, have you and Sasuke been fighting again? At the mention of the Tami's name, Naruto's face turned an unhealthy shade of red. No. I haven't seen the bastard all day. How come I don't believe you? Naruto practically huffed as he turned and began walking towards his apartment, not caring if Sakura followed or not, which, she did. I don't care what you believe, I'm not lying. Okay, then what have you been doing? Training. By yourself? That hard? Sakura seemed incredulous. Is that a crime now? No, it's just, why would you do that alone? Deep down, Sakura knew how much Naruto hated being alone. And, despite how annoyingly obnoxious he could be, he had enough friends that he didn't need to do something like training by himself. In fact, she knew for a certainty that Lee would have been more than willing. At least, he hadn't had any plans when he left her house this morning. And, with that thought, Naruto's face wasn't the only one sporting an unhealthy blush. I don't always have to be around people. Naruto defended, even though his voice was less than certain. I know. Before either one of them knew it, they'd climbed the stairs to Naruto's apartment, both noticing a large, white box leaning against his front door as they approached. Hey, Naruto, were you expecting a package? Scratching his head, Naruto stared down at the plain white box, only, on closer inspection, it wasn't so plain. In small, silver letters was the name of a prominent clothier, at least, Naruto had heard they did good work. He'd never been in the store before. What was the point when he couldn't even afford to buy a single sock, let alone the pair? As his finger traced over the lettering, Sakura screeched behind him. Sengals? Is that really a package from there? Naruto shrugged while gingerly picking up the box. Maybe, although I don't know why. Sakura didn't even ask for permission to come in as Naruto opened his apartment door and walked inside. After moving a few cups of empty ramen, he set the box down on his countertop, staring dumbly at the thing. Aren't you going to open it? Sakura asked impatiently, making Naruto jump at the shrillness in her voice. What if it's not for me? He asked. They probably got the wrong place and delivered it here by mistake, ouch. Hey, what was that for? Naruto asked while rubbing the growing lump on the back of his head. Idiot, it has your name right on it. Oh, well, Sakura did have a point. There in the very lower right-hand corner, in beautifully inked letters was the name, Uzumaki Naruto. Damn it, if you don't open it, I will. Okay, Kami-sama, just calm down. Careful not to rip the box, Naruto gently popped the top open, pulling away the light tissue paper to reveal the most beautiful shirt he'd ever seen. Lifting it from the box, he marveled at the soft feel. There was no mistaking the high-grade silk comprising the sapphire blue, long-sleeved shirt. Running up the center were hand-sewn ties, and along the bottom, brilliant orange koi twisted and swam in a wondrous symphony. Kami, Naruto, that's beautiful, Sakura said with awe. Reaching out, she ran a hand down the length of the shirt. Oh, it's so soft. And it matches your eyes perfectly. I can't even imagine how much that cost. Naruto stared at the object in his hands, for once in his life, completely speechless. Sakura had no such verbal problem as she began rummaging through the box, lifting out a gleaming white pair of cotton pants as she came back up for air. "You are going to look amazing in this." Taking in the pants, Naruto's brain fumbled through his faded memory banks. Something about this seemed familiar. Not the clothes themselves, but the idea of receiving them. The pieces were just starting to come together when Sakura spoke up again. "Look Naruto, there's a card." Reaching into the almost empty box, Sakura pulled out a small card, her eyebrows furrowing as she read the front, "Dobi." Forgetting his weariness, Naruto's hand shot out lightning fast, ripping the envelope from Sakura's hand and tearing open the seal. Quickly his eyes roamed the script, his mouth turning into a deep frown. "Dobi, since you were such a girl and concerned about what to wear tonight, I took the liberty of getting you an appropriate outfit. Do not be late, your fiancé." "That fucking bastard." Naruto breathed while flinging the note to the floor, only to be picked up by Sakura, her furrowed brows rising as her eyes widened. "Naruto, is this from Sass?" The shirt was now back in the box and Naruto was pacing his apartment floor, his hands tugging relentlessly at his blonde locks. "Asshole, how dare he keep treating me like a girl?" "Naruto, why is it signed, your fiancé?" Sakura's voice was quiet, but firm, finally making Naruto turn to face the woman he'd forgotten was even there. Letting out a choked laugh, Naruto threw his hands in the air. "Damned if I know. Stupid Teme is up to something." Sakura's eyes were intent as she wondered if what she'd suspected all these months to years was true. "Tell me what happened." Flopping down on his sofa, Naruto hung his head between his legs before setting his chin in his hands. Somewhere, in the back of his mind, he registered Sakura's light weight shifting beside him as he started to relate yesterday's events. "Long story short, Tsunade called me into her office yesterday and told me that Teme made an official request to marry me." Naruto heard a sharp intake of breath from Sakura and interpreted it to mean she was as surprised as he was. "I know. I was like, what the fuck? So I went to his house and was going to beat the shit out of him." Here, Naruto's voice faded. For a second, he thought about telling Sakura how close he'd come to losing control and really hurting Sasuke. It wasn't like she didn't know about Kyuubi, but all the same, he decided to keep that bit of information to himself. "Anyway, I told him it was a pretty shitty joke. But then he had the gall to tell me it wasn't a joke and that he wouldn't take it back." Running a jerking hand through his hair, Naruto added, "Then he told me if I go on a date tonight with him, to Shugita's, that he'd explain everything. The Tame's up to something. I just don't know what." Sakura stared, her mouth agape. It wasn't that she was upset, nor hurt by this sudden turn of events. Hell, she wasn't even really surprised Sasuke felt this way about Naruto. What did surprise her was the way he was going about it. And, she only wished she was surprised by Naruto's response. After taking a minute to digest the information, Sakura laid a gentle hand on her friend's arm. "Naruto, have you considered Sasuke's feelings might be real?" Naruto jerked back as if he'd been burned, staring down at the spot on his arm where Sakura's hand had just been. "Why would you say something like that? Sasuke barely acknowledges that I'm his friend, let alone..." Gulping loudly, he turned his face away, trying to hide the blush creeping back into his cheeks. Sighing, Sakura shook her head. Sasuke might be a genius when it came to jutsus and fighting, but he was an idiot when it came to feelings. Then again, Naruto was pretty thick. Maybe he thought this was the only way to get through to the blonde. "Naruto, I want you to promise me something," Sakura ventured. Turning big, innocent blue eyes towards one of his best friends, Naruto automatically answered, "Anything." Sakura smiled, she just couldn't help herself. "Don't jump to conclusions tonight. What are you talking about? For once in your life, keep your mouth shut and listen. Don't read anything else into what he's saying than the words themselves. Sometimes people actually mean what they say." "Huh?" Folding her hands in her lap, Sakura looked down and sighed again before standing to leave. "Just have a good time tonight." "Oh, I plan to. The bastard's paying and you know how much I can eat." Sakura couldn't help but smile again at the wide and happy grin stretching across Naruto's face. Laughing, she began walking towards the door. "Get some rest. I have a feeling you're going to need it." Just as she was about ready to close the door, Sakura turned and gave a soft smile. "Naruto, I'm happy for you." And then she left, leaving an even more confused blonde idiot heading for his bed, finally able to catch a few winks before his big night. Sasuke looked at his watch one final time before knocking on Naruto's door. He was 2 minutes early, but having no idea what to do with the 120 extra seconds, he simply decided to get the evening started sooner rather than later. Inwardly, he wondered if Naruto would be home or if he decided to bail on the idea of having a date with him. But in the end, he decided his blonde objective would definitely be behind the door. He'd been promised a date, and if there was one thing Naruto always did, it was keep his word. His knuckles had barely rasped the door a third time before a smirk flitted across Sasuke's mouth at Naruto's grumbled words filtering through the closed door. Stop pounding. It's not even 7 yet. As the door opened, Sasuke was greeted by the top of Naruto's sunny golden hair. Reaching down, Naruto was in middle of smoothing down his precious blue shirt, only looking up after the door was wide open. Watching with a mixture of satisfaction and awe, Sasuke's black eyes narrowed mischievously as he saw Naruto's mouth gape, his wide blue eyes obviously ogling the sight before him. For his part, Sasuke knew he looked good. Completely in black, his clothes mirrored the ones he'd gotten Naruto. Leaning casually against the doorframe, arms crossed the ebony silkiness enshrouding Sasuke's body, the red flames embroidered around the bottom licking up his chest in the most tantalizing of ways. Dobi, are you going to stand there and drool all night, or are you ready to go? Cold water splashed across his face couldn't have woken Naruto up any quicker, and the sheer force of his lower jaw making contact with his upper one nearly knocked him unconscious. Feeling the burn of a fresh blush, Naruto shifted his eyes, looking away as he exited his home. It's not my fault you're so unnaturally beautiful. Anyone would look. Sasuke stared at the back of Naruto's head for a few seconds, completely shocked by what he'd just admitted. Turning his head at the silence, Naruto saw the brief look of uncertainty in Sasuke's eyes. It was a rare glimpse of emotion and he only shrugged. What? It's not like you don't already know that. Sasuke shook his head, just surprised to hear you say it. Yeah, well, don't get used to the compliments. I still think you're a bastard. By now they'd reached the bottom of the steps and Naruto turned to look up at his wannabe fiancé, giving Sasuke a wonderful view of just how good he looked in the new clothes. Truly, he couldn't have picked better if Naruto had been in the store with him. Just as he'd thought, the blue silk perfectly matched Naruto's eyes, although, it still paled in comparison. In the years he'd been away from the leaf, Sasuke had spent hours looking into people's eyes, always searching for that brilliant blue hue that saw straight to his soul. But in all the time he'd spent looking, he'd never even come close to finding its equal, and since coming back, he'd made sure to burn the color into his memory. Sasuke? Refocusing, Sasuke realized he'd let his mind wander, completely ignoring the beautiful blonde standing before him, waving his hands. Hey, earth to asshole. Get your hands out of my face, Sasuke practically growled. Fine, as if I wanted them there to begin with. For a minute there I thought your brain had left your body or something. Idiot. Hey, I'm not the one practically going into a coma while standing on their feet. Don't, me. That's not even a word, teme. Ga. Turning on his heel, Sasuke started walking towards the heart of Konoha, and more importantly, the higher-end areas. Come on Dobi. Our reservation's in half an hour. Hey, wait for me. Jogging a few steps, Naruto easily caught up to Sasuke, walking silently beside him while placing his hands behind his head. But soon the quiet was too much for Naruto to bear and he began talking. Oi, have you ever eaten at this place before? Of course. Oh. Naruto's arms fell to his sides, stuffing his hands in his pockets as his mind trailed back to the same thoughts he'd had the day before, wondering if he'd really be welcomed into such an establishment. If he were honest with himself, that thought had kept him up more last night than the unease of going on a date with his best friend. He'd gone round and round about it, thinking that maybe he should say something to Sasuke regarding the possibility. But this was an Uchiha he was talking about. Somehow Naruto doubted the restaurant would really kick them out if an Uchiha was involved. Suddenly, Naruto looked up to find himself walking alone. Stopping, he turned his head to find Sasuke standing, his dark eyes narrowed. What? Naruto asked. Why are you being so quiet? It's abnormal. Naruto fumed. I was thinking. Oh, so that was the source of smoke I saw coming from your ears. Teme. Soft giggling combined with high-pitched squeals stopped Naruto mid-insult. Turning his head to see where the noise was coming from only elicited a groan. "Kami, did you really have to wear that outfit tonight, bastard?" Sasuke snorted. "Now what are you babbling about?" Naruto waved his arms in the air. "Did you even bother to look in a mirror? We're going to be hounded by your fangirls all night long." Tilting his head up, Sasuke's irritation turned into a devious smirk. "Jealous? Could your head swell any bigger?" Instantly, Sasuke's thoughts ventured south, totally perverting Naruto's innocent statement. "As if I'd be jealous about a bunch of girls who've been chasing after you since we were kids. You hate them more than anyone. It's just that with you looking like that, they're gonna be bugging us all night long." For the first time in a very long time, Sasuke spared a glance at the group of girls standing across the street. Their faces flushed as they clung to each other whispering. But what Naruto failed to notice, or more likely was just too damn naive to see, was that they weren't just looking at ebony on white skin, but brilliant blonde against tan. Shaking his head, Sasuke was once again floored at how utterly oblivious Naruto could be. For a shinobi, he wasn't very observant. "Idiot," Sasuke whispered while starting to walk towards the restaurant once again. Puffing out his cheeks, Naruto huffed, "It's not my fault you dressed to attract so much attention." Sasuke's body made a full stop, his eyes narrowed and cold as he turned to face Naruto. "You think I dressed this way to impress them?" he asked, his thumb pointing at the annoyingly growing horde of young women. Scratching his head, Naruto's blue eyes widened, unsure what he'd said wrong. "Well, no, not exactly. I mean, we both had to dress nice for this restaurant, didn't we? So, now you think I picked my clothes to impress a bunch of people I don't give two shits about in some fancy restaurant." Inwardly, Naruto cringed at the coldness in Sasuke's voice. Outwardly, he got angry. "What crawled up your stoic ass and died? Are you really this stupid, or do you just play dumb?" Naruto balled his hands into fists of fury. "Is this how you're going to act tonight? Is this why I put on these stupid clothes? So, now the clothes I bought you are stupid." "Damn," Sasuke's voice had gone from cold to frozen in a matter of seconds. "Damn it, that's not what I meant. That's what you said. I know, it's just," Naruto sighed, although he generally liked arguing with Sasuke, for some reason, tonight, it just didn't feel right. "I don't think the clothes are stupid. They're actually really nice. It's gonna take me forever to pay you back for them." "Pay me back? Who said I wanted you to do that?" Naruto felt his cheeks getting hot again. "Teme, I don't need your charity and I sure as hell don't want your money." "Moron, I know that. The clothes were a gift." Naruto looked genuinely startled. "Why?" Unconsciously rubbing his hands down the ultra-soft fabric, Naruto's brow furrowed. "I don't know exactly how much this cost, but it had to be a lot." "Why would you spend so much on something for me?" Sasuke stared, utterly speechless as he searched Naruto's eyes for some indication that he was just trying to goad him, but all he saw was sincere confusion, which, unfortunately, explained this entire conversation. Really and truly, Naruto had no idea what he meant to the Uchiha. For all his boasting, most likely Naruto had no true idea what he meant to anyone. Sighing, Sasuke felt his shoulders relax as his feet moved, crossing the small distance he'd placed between himself and Naruto. Unthinking, he started to reach out a hand, wanting nothing more than to touch beautifully tanned skin in an effort to convey how desperately he needed the dobi in his life. But as his hand neared scarred cheeks, Naruto flinched, pulling his body inward, the life briefly draining from his sapphire eyes. Dropping his hand before it made contact with his desired flesh, Sasuke placed his hands in his pockets while leaning over, his mouth close to Naruto's ear as he whispered, "Dobi, for the record, I dressed this way for only one person, you. And, if it makes you feel better, think of the clothes as a mutual gift. They're for you to keep, but even better, I like the way your ass looks in those white pants." Pulling away, Sasuke stared down with a satisfied smirk, watching red slowly creep down Naruto's face to color his tantalizing neck as well. "Now, if that's settled, let's go eat." Sasanaru 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 Sasanaru. Naruto eyed Sasuke, careful not to walk in front of him. Although he was sure Sasuke was up to something, he wasn't about to give the pervert any kind of opportunity to stare at his ass. For his part, Sasuke seemed content with their previous exchange, even though he doubted Naruto believed him, no matter how blatantly honest he'd been. Regardless, Naruto's recent walking position let him know that at least the Dobi was thinking about what he'd said. Soon enough, they found themselves standing in front of a small podium, the host of Shugitas staring down at something neither of them could see, his small eyes focused intently on whatever it said. Still standing behind Sasuke, Naruto let his eyes wander around the small waiting area they were in. If the rest of the restaurant was even half this nice, then it must be one gorgeous place. Below his sandaled feet, obsidian glass tiles decorated the floor, while twin dragons entwined themselves in a never-ending battle of wills. Above him, hung sheer red curtains, leaving an oddly beautiful crimson light to illuminate its guests. And, from somewhere close by, Naruto could hear and smell the gentle rush of water. He'd heard there were multiple ponds and waterfalls throughout the place, something his ears and nose confirmed. As Naruto's wide eyes took in the scenery around him, Sasuke spoke to the thin man behind the podium. "Reservations for Uchiha Sasuke." "Ah, Uchiha-san. A private room for two, is that correct?" Sasuke nodded. At the mention of a private room, Naruto's ears perked up and he finally turned, glancing around Sasuke's shoulders as he asked, "A private room?" Sasuke turned at the question, having totally missed how close Naruto had gotten to him while he'd been talking, finding himself staring into blue pools of barely contained emotion. "I thought we could use the privacy to talk." Naruto looked skeptical. After the comment about his ass earlier, he was beginning to think Sasuke had paid a little bit too much attention to Kakashi-sensei's teachings. "Sure Teme, whatever you say." "Naruto, you did want to find out why I made that official request, didn't you?" "Naruto?" The host's voice interrupted anything Naruto might have said in return, and soon black and blue eyes turned to look questioningly at the man who'd interrupted them. "Uzumaki Naruto?" Without a second thought, Sasuke answered, "Yes." The man's tiny eyes darted from Sasuke to Naruto, finally taking a closer look at the Uchiha's guest, and now that he did take the time to look, it was obvious who the blonde was. Coughing into his hand, the host excused himself. "One moment please. I need to check on something." And then in a nervous dash, he was gone. Sasuke stood perplexed, an emotion he rarely suffered from. What was that about? "I think maybe I should leave." Sasuke could feel his eyes narrowing even before he turned, but when he saw the look on Naruto's face, his softened. Something was wrong, but he had no idea what. "Why would you leave? We just got here." "Yeah, but somehow I doubt I'm going to get any further than this room." Irritation was an emotion Sasuke found himself all too acquainted with while around the blonde, and it seemed tonight was going to be no different. "Damn it Naruto. What's wrong with you now?" Anger filled Naruto's body, the obvious tone of Sasuke's voice clearly indicating his annoyance with him. "Teme, nothing's wrong with me." "Uchiha-san, may we have a word in private?" Once again, Naruto was cut off by someone else, only this time, the man doing the talking was better dressed, his small, round glasses sliding precariously down his nose as he took a quick appraisal of Sasuke and an even longer one of Naruto. Naruto felt his whole body stiffen, he knew what was coming. Granted, it didn't happen as often now as it had when he was younger, but he knew the look all the same. Sasuke saw Naruto's reaction and knew he'd gone on the defensive. Not that it looked like he was ready for a physical fight, more like a mental or emotional one. The dead eyes, closed-off posture, stiff muscles, Naruto was bracing himself for something. Sasuke only wished he knew what so he'd be a little more prepared. Turning so that his full attention was on the owner of the restaurant, Sasuke let his body go cold, giving the man his most bored facial mask. "I have nothing to say to you, in private." The owner stiffened, but only nodded. "As you wish." Then, taking a small step forward, he flatly stated, "Although we are always more than pleased to have an Uchiha dine with us, we were unaware of who your guest for this evening would be. Unfortunately, the level of our patronage does not allow for such a creature to dine with them." Sasuke's face showed no emotion while his brain screamed at the term creature. He hadn't even called Naruto by his name. "Excuse me, what exactly are you saying?" The deadly low tone was a warning. And Naruto knew it was the only one Sasuke's enemies ever got. "Sasuke," Naruto said while grabbing a fistful of Sasuke's shirt. "The vessel is not welcome in a restaurant. The vessel has a name." The owner visibly prickled, his shoulders squaring. "No matter what the name, it is not welcome here." This establishment serves the upper crust of Konoha society, not its horrific creations. By now, Sasuke's eyes were bleeding red, his body deathly still. But behind him, a soft laughter was sliding across his skin. Naruto's laughter. Horrific creation? You've got to give him points for creativity, huh, bastard? Turning his spinning eyes towards his friend, he saw a wide grin splitting Naruto's face, but despite the laughter and smile, his eyes were cold and dead. Seriously, Sasuke, that's one of the best ones I've heard. Sasuke felt the weight of Naruto's fingers leave his shirt and looked down to see the slightly wrinkled fabric, already missing the closeness of the hand. Oi, as fun as this is, I think I'll be going. Somehow I doubt I'd like the food here anyway, Naruto said, his body already turning and heading for the door. Watching the door silently close behind a mop of blonde hair, Sasuke stood, astounded by Naruto's relatively calm reaction. There was a reason Naruto was known as the #1 loud-mouthed hyperactive ninja. The owner had no idea how lucky he'd been, nor, as it turned out, just how far he should push said luck. Uchiha-san, it goes without saying that you are certainly welcome back anytime you wish to eat here. As a matter of fact, consider your next meal on the house. Might I further suggest that if there is some reason you feel you owe your associate some type of payment for a deed he has performed for you, then there are several lower-class establishments whose standards should be low enough. Walk away. Those two words dropped into the silent lobby like a stone. Pardon? Sasuke dropped his head, allowing his dark bangs to cover his spinning eyes. Walk away. Now, I don't understand. Clearly, that at least is true. Let me explain. When you go home tonight, take off your shoes and sink into the comfort of your home. As you lie next to whatever partner in life you've chosen who can stand your bigoted nature. Remember this. You owe this evening and every one after to the person you just threw out. The owner sucked in a shallow breath, the air hissing through his thinned lips. Are you saying I should be grateful that monster didn't kill me? Sasuke laughed, but it wasn't funny. Depends on which monster you're referring to. You never had anything to fear from Naruto. That person has more humanity in a single golden eyelash than you have in the whole of your miserable body. Then, taking a step closer, Sasuke gave the owner the full brunt of his bloody eyes. This monster, on the other hand, is a completely different matter. The caustic smell of urine hit Sasuke's nose, and sparing a glance down, he smirked at the ever-darkening spot in the man's crotch. With barely a passing HN of satisfaction, Sasuke turned and headed for the door. As his hauntingly delicate fingers reached around the door handle, Sasuke turned, just enough to make sure his red, spinning eyes were visible. It's good to know that Uchihas are welcome in your restaurant. Once Naruto and I are married, I'll be sure to bring the newest Uchiha here. Of course, I will expect his meal to be complimentary, as well as my own. Sasuke thought Naruto would be standing outside, waiting for him. But instead, the blonde was halfway down the street by the time he finally finished up with the owner. For a moment, Sasuke considered running to catch up, but closing his eyes, he teleported instead, startling Naruto as he suddenly appeared before him. For fuck's sake, Sasuke, a little warning would be appreciated. Sasuke totally ignored the comment. You didn't wait for me. Why would I? Why wouldn't you? Because, I didn't expect you to leave. What? Well, you weren't the one getting kicked out. You wanted to eat there, so I thought. The words dried up in Naruto's mouth as he suddenly found Sasuke's furious eyes focused on him. If he hadn't seen that look before, he'd have flinched, but instead, he stood his ground, holding the Uchiha's gaze. Moron, why would I ever eat somewhere you aren't welcome? Reaching up, Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Well, I dunno. It's just, I mean, you didn't. Idiot, Sasuke mumbled, his eyes relaxing as he reached up a hand to push a wayward lock of golden hair out of Naruto's eyes. But once again, the action was met with a distinct flinch and his hand fell away before making contact. Sighing, he turned and started walking again. Let's find somewhere else to eat. Really? Naruto asked, scurrying to catch up to the Uchiha. I'm still hungry. Yeah, me too. They walked for a few moments in silence, but Sasuke was still curious about Naruto's subdued reaction and finally asked, why didn't you blow up at him? What do ya mean? Dobi, I've suffered through more than a few shattered eardrums when you're mad. Naruto shrugged. I guess I wasn't angry. Sasuke scoffed. He was pissed enough for the both of them. Why the hell not? Because, it's pointless. Sasuke was silent, staring down at his friend as they continued walking. He's ignorant and doesn't want to change that part of himself. I don't argue with people whose opinion means nothing to me. A thin smile graced Sasuke's lips. So, that must mean my opinion matters to you the most. Naruto growled, but only managed a meek bastard before running his hand roughly through his hair as Sasuke quietly chuckled. So, you really aren't bothered by it? Sasuke just couldn't believe that. He'd seen the look in Naruto's eyes, the tense set to his body. I wouldn't say that, but what mostly upset me is that I should have said something earlier. Huh? Yeah, I thought something like that might happen. What? Then why did you agree to go? Naruto blushed from embarrassment. Well, I'd kind of convinced myself that since I was with an Uchiha, they wouldn't dare not let me in. Sasuke started to call Naruto an idiot again, but in reality, he'd kind of been thinking the same thing. Not that he'd known ahead of time, but the longer he thought on it now, he was a little taken aback. Being the last Uchiha did come with some perks, most of which he hated, but even after his past discrepancies, there was little he was denied. So instead of calling his friend Adobe, he simply said, HN. Anyway, I guess I should apologize, or something. Apologize? For what? Naruto laughed, and Sasuke was glad to hear the honesty in it. Well, Teme, I'm sort of used to getting kicked out of places, but I'll bet it was kind of a new experience for you. Sorry for the embarrassment. Then the laughter died and Sasuke was acutely aware of the anxiety filtering back into the blonde. Naruto, I was just thinking. Again? Don't tax yourself too much tonight. I think a lot more now than I used to. HN. And how's that working out for you? Naruto stopped, his face red with fury. Asshole. I can't believe I was feeling guilty about anything, when really, you should be grateful for what just happened. Sasuke crossed his arms over his chest, his posture taking on the look of someone incredibly bored. See, this is why you shouldn't think, because that made absolutely no sense. Assuming, just for a minute, that Sakura is right and you've got no ulterior motive for the whole fiancé thing. Sakura? What does she have to do with this? Naruto waved his arms in the air in utter frustration. I spoke to her earlier today, but that's not what's important right now. No? Then what is? This. What just happened? It's good that you got to see it before this goes any further. Sasuke's bored facade became acutely more interested, having a distinct feeling he wasn't going to like what Naruto's mind had come up with. Explain. Gah, why do you have to make everything so difficult? Moving his hand rapidly, pointing from himself to Sasuke in quick succession, Naruto's voice was exasperated. You and me. This is what it's like being with me. The looks, the stares, the animosity. You're an Uchiha, the last Uchiha. Most of the village accepts us hanging out because they think you have no other choice. We're teammates and they excuse you for it. I mean, it wasn't your fault we were put on a team together. But anything else, and what? Naruto was pulling at his hair, vaguely wondering if he'd have any left by the time he figured out what was going on between them. Kami, I don't even know why I'm talking about this. We're friends. Best friends, Sasuke corrected. Yeah, best friends, Naruto agreed, uncomfortable with the warmth spreading through his chest. Inching closer, Sasuke lifted an eyebrow. Best friends with benefits. Best friends with what? Naruto's eyes widened, wondering how and when Sasuke had gotten so close. Close enough to feel his breath ghosting across one of his scared cheeks as Sasuke answered. There's only one person whose opinion I care about. The rest of this damn village can burn to the ground for all I care. Sasuke, don't say that. Why? It's true. There's only one reason why I came back. Why I stay. Sasuke, Naruto felt his breath catch in his throat. He wanted to say more. Wanted to tell Sasuke how much he wanted that to be true. He might be confused as hell about what he was feeling right now, but one thing was for certain, being the Uchiha's most important person was pure bliss to Naruto's wounded soul. Silence hung in the air while Sasuke remained, his lips a mere hair's breadth away from Naruto's cheek, constantly assaulting the tanned skin with its mind-numbing sensations. Uncontrolled shivers began racking Naruto's body as he stood, unsure what to do. He'd never allowed himself to view Sasuke as anything more than a friend, and in his mind, even that term was pushing what their relationship was. Sure, he'd always known Sasuke was drop-dead gorgeous. A person would have to be blind not to notice that, but he'd never considered the moonlight skin and silky raven hair as anything more than what it was. But now, Naruto, Sasuke, what are the two of you doing in the middle of the street? Stepping back, Sasuke scowled at the woman below a hazy pink rainbow of hair. Just when he'd been making progress. Sakura-chan, Lee, Naruto breathed, the sound heavy with relief. Naruto, my young and jovial friend. How good it is to see you looking so resplendent in the finery of silken fabric. Both Sakura and Naruto stared at the beaming creature that was Rock Lee, while Sasuke crossed his arms over his chest, his face apathetic once again. Scratching the back of his head, Naruto looked towards Sakura, who only shrugged her shoulders at her boyfriend's odd choice of wording. By now, she was used to it. Thanks Lee. I think. You are most welcome. Then, turning to Sasuke, Lee beamed once again. And you, Sasuke. You are looking most dapper as well in your choice of clothing for this evening. Lee's happy exterior faltered only a fraction of a second before a blinding smile once again lit up his face. Sakura and I were on our way to meet Hinata and Kiba for dinner at Choji's parents' restaurant. Also, I believe my rival Neji will be there chaperoning his cousin. Would the two of you like to join us? Lee, I think they've already got plans. Naruto looked from Sakura to Sasuke and made a decision, and just as Sasuke was agreeing with Sakura, Naruto walked over, throwing an arm around Sasuke's shoulders as he happily said, "Actually, we'd love to join you for dinner." Sasuke's eyes narrowed, Dobi. But whatever he was going to say next suddenly evaporated when he looked into Naruto's pleading blue eyes. Teme, I've eaten there before. Understanding washed through Sasuke and his features softened. The meaning behind Naruto's words were clear. If he'd eaten there in the past, it meant he was welcome. And if it was Choji's family they were talking about, then that meant he'd be more comfortable there as well. Casually shrugging his shoulders, Sasuke muttered, "Whatever," and instantly missed the warmth of Naruto's body as he moved away. Looking confused, Sakura cocked her head to the side. "But I thought you were going to." Sakura. Sasuke's cold voice silenced her as he shot a heated look towards Naruto, wondering just how much he'd discussed with their pink-haired friend. It wasn't that he was upset someone else knew about his proposal and thus ensuing plans, it was more like he felt jealous of Naruto and Sakura's friendship. So much had happened during the years of his absence. So much they'd shared without him. Shifting on his feet, Naruto looked out, towards the relatively empty street while rubbing the back of his hand across his nose, trying to answer Sakura's question without answering it at all. "Yeah, well, that didn't exactly work out." "Naruto?" Sakura's voice was soft as she raised a hand, reaching out towards her friend and teammate, instinctively knowing something was wrong. But just as her hand was about to make contact, Naruto conveniently dodged to the side, his lips curving into a wide grin. "Hey, I don't know about everyone else, but I'm starving and this bastard still owes me dinner." And with that, Naruto began walking down the street, a hyperactive Lee coming up to his side. Soon, both of them were totally engrossed in some kind of conversation, leaving their respective dates still standing in the middle of the road. "Sasuke, what happened?" But Sasuke barely heard the question. Instead, his mind was replaying what he'd just seen and he mumbled, "So, it's not just me." "What?" Sasuke stared down at the top of Sakura's ridiculously pink hair. Or, at least that's what he'd once thought. He supposed it was something he'd gotten used to over the years, just like the Dobi's stupidity. He now found them both oddly endearing. And, although he hated how close Sakura and Naruto were, logic dictated she might be a good resource. Plus, Sakura was a girl, and sometimes girls just had a knack for figuring out certain things. He always flinches or pulls away. Sakura's eyebrows bunched together, still lost as to what the exact topic of their conversation was. "Who? Naruto?" Sasuke nodded before responding. "He touches other people, hugs them, or like just now, he put his arm around me. And, I've touched him multiple times during a spar or all-out fight. Hell, at the Valley of End, I put my fist through his chest." Sasuke. Sakura's sharp tone brought him out of his thoughts. "I know what you did to him, but I don't want to hear about it, understand?" For a moment, Sasuke wondered if Sakura was going to haul off and hit him. In a way, he thought she really wanted to, but was holding back, which was most likely a good thing. Not that she'd probably manage to land the punch, but if she did, he knew it would hurt. After all, Sakura was unreasonably strong. Nodding his head again, Sasuke clarified what he was trying to get at. Just now, when you tried to touch him, he moved, avoiding it. I thought it was just me. Sakura felt understanding dawn along with a significant slump in her shoulders. I know. Any theories? Sakura laughed. Me? I thought you were supposed to be the genius. But the comment only earned her a glare. You're not dumb. Thanks. But next time you try and give a compliment, try not sounding so sarcastic. Sakura's own sarcasm lending a biting sting to her words, which Sasuke ignored. Well? Sakura sighed, shaking her bubble gum hair as she answered. Maybe. Sasuke's silence was his indication for her to continue. I know your history, Sasuke. I know you've been alone a long time, but at some point, when you were younger, you were loved. Careful to keep his suddenly raging emotions in check, all Sakura saw on Sasuke's face was a look of boredom. Your parents, especially your mother, they touched you, comforted you when you were hurt, kissed the injury away, held you in both happy and sad times. But Naruto, Sakura's eyes went sad, as if she were personally feeling the hurt of her friend. He never had that, not even as a baby. As children, the only time any of us ever touched him was during a fight or to reprimand one of his stupid comments. Blushing slightly, she added, me worst of all. I don't think he knows what to do. He acts so happy and his heart is full to nearly bursting with love for all of his precious people, but he doesn't know how to accept it in return. He gives and gives until there is almost nothing left of him, but Naruto doesn't know how to receive. Sometimes, I wonder if he even thinks he deserves it. During her explanation, Sakura had been steadfastly staring at her feet, only venturing to look up into Sasuke's blank eyes once she'd finished, completely at a loss as to what he was thinking until he whispered, "Idiot." What? Of course he deserves it. The heat Sakura had felt rising to her cheeks cooled in an instant and she found her head nodding in agreement. No one deserves it more. Sasuke. What? Naruto told me about your request. About you wanting to marry him. So, are you sincere? Sasuke didn't even think twice before answering, yes. Sakura blew out a breath, relief flooding her body. You know he thinks there's some kind of tortuous reason behind it. I know. Sakura didn't miss the annoyance in her friend's voice. I think I've known for a while how you feel, but Naruto hasn't. Reaching over, Sakura grabbed a hold of Sasuke's arm, her turquoise eyes looking up at him in friendship, something Sasuke was grateful for. He'd always hated that puppy dog look she used to give him, but this newer one was something he could respect. He loves you, more than anyone. Those years you were gone. Sakura's voice trailed off, her eyes misting over as she left the words unspoken. You just need to prove to him that you mean it. The love is there. Find a way to make him see it. Oi, Sakura-chan, Sasuke-teme, are you two coming anytime soon? Sakura squeezed Sasuke's arm, but refused to let it go and was surprised when he didn't force her hand away. Grunting, Sasuke stated, come on, our idiot cohorts are getting too far ahead of us. Sasuke missed the hand coming up to punch him in the chest. A harsh whoosh of breath making a hasty exit from his body as Sakura shouted, don't call Lee an idiot. Sasanaru 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 Sasanaru. By the time they arrived at the Akamichi's restaurant, both Hyugas along with one Inuzuka were already seated, drinks on the table. Greetings friends. We apologize for our late arrival. Bowing deeply at the waist, Lee looked sincerely sorry as he faced their three friends. About time, Kiba accused, but both his voice and brown eyes lit with mischief once he saw their extra companions. Standing up, he sauntered over to Naruto, his eyes roving over the blonde in an appreciative way. Damn Naruto, who knew you'd clean up so nice? Sasuke felt his skin prickle, his face contorting into a deep scowl. Shut it mutt, don't make fun of the way I look. Kiba's light eyes darkened slightly with confusion as he stared from Naruto to Sakura and then to Sasuke's soulless eyes, searching for a reason why Naruto thought he was making fun of him. But none of them seemed the least bit helpful. Dude, I was just... Naruto pushed Kiba aside, sitting across from a blushing Hinata, completely ignoring his friend. Hey, Hinata, what do you see in Dogface over there anyway? Hinata only blushed deeper. Naruto-kun, I don't think Kiba-kun was making fun of you. Waving a dismissive hand in the air, Naruto leaned over the table, no worries. I think he's just jealous that he doesn't look as cool as me. As if to give the point more emphasis, Naruto wiggled his eyebrows in a playful, yet suggestive manner, earning a throaty growl from Kiba. Ignoring Kiba's warning, Naruto reached a hand out, aiming for one of the strawberries he'd eyed laying on a plate in front of Hinata. But before his fingers could touch one piece of delicate fruit, he found his wrist captured by Kiba's hand. Kiba, what the hell? Keep your annoying body on your side of the table and away from my girlfriend. Naruto's blue eyes stared up in shock, but they only widened further when a pale hand descended on Kiba's arm. Sasuke. Inuzuka, why are you touching my dobi? The room went deathly silent, all eyes riveted on the strange sight of Naruto half leaning over the table, his fingers hovering above the plate of strawberries, Kiba's hand painfully gripping his wrist while Sasuke stood inches away from Kiba, his own hand grasping the man's arm. Although Kiba was no coward, he also had a healthy fear of one Uchiha Sasuke. Really, he wondered how on earth Naruto could stand being around someone so obviously cold and yet volatilely violent. He saw little redeeming qualities in the last Uchiha. Neji curiously watched the events unfolding in front of him while his cousin was near to passing out with worry. He could feel Lee's tension rising and knew something needed to be done quickly before more people were pulled into this odd tangle of emotions. Eyes blank, he calmly picked up his glass, taking a sip before speaking. Kiba, if you look at Naruto's hand, it is quite obvious to see he was reaching for the fruit, not my cousin. And, Uchiha, as much as I hate it, Hinata is quite fond of Kiba. If you injure him, the Hyugas would not be happy. As if I'm afraid of the Hyugas. Neji set his glass down, finally looking up into Sasuke's cold eyes. I will not debate the stupidity of that statement, but merely ask that you take others' feelings into consideration. At the word, others, Neji minutely shifted his head in Naruto's direction, essentially dragging Sasuke's eyes with it. Far from stupid, Neji was well aware that the only thing Uchiha Sasuke held with any regard was the obscenely annoying yet perceptive blonde sitting at their table. Neji, I don't need you to fight my battles for me. Sasuke barely heard Kiba's protests, as his eyes settled on the top of Naruto's blonde, trembling head. And no, Sasuke did not think the trembling was from fear or anxiety, but most likely uncontrollable rage at what he was doing. Taking a deep breath, he began counting down from 5. He gauged that was about all the time he had before. Teme, what the fuck do you think you're doing? And, there it was. At the outburst, both Kiba and Sasuke dropped their holds, each staring into Naruto's fuming face as he stood, blue eyes glaring. Inwardly, Neji laughed, knowing Naruto was the only person alive who'd ever be so blatantly antagonistic towards Sasuke. Well, except maybe for Sai, but he thought the only reason for that was due to Sai's complete and utter ignorance. But unlike Sai, Naruto would live to tell the tale. Dobi, you need to calm. Don't tell me what to do, asshole. Then, looking at Kiba, Naruto threw out an accusatory finger. Just for the record, all I wanted was a strawberry. I'd never hurt Hinata, or you for that matter. Kiba had the grace to blush. Naruto, I didn't think you were going to hurt her, Just what? Suddenly, Kiba seemed to be taking after his girlfriend as his face reddened even more. Scratching the back of his head while staring at his feet, Kiba couldn't even begin to look at Hinata nor Naruto as he answered, I just don't want anyone else touching her. She's my. Doing a complete emotional 180, Naruto let loose a gentle chuckle as he slapped Kiba on the back. Stop talking before Hinata dies of embarrassment. With his face splitting into a wide grin, he watched Kiba's head come up and give a slight nod as he said, sorry Naruto. Naruto shrugged, glad their misunderstanding was solved. Unfortunately, he still had to deal with a stoic bastard. With all laughter fading from his face, Naruto turned towards Sasuke, only to find the Uchiha looking bored, his hands stuffed into his pockets. Teme, what's your excuse? Sasuke huffed. Same as Inuzuka's. Huh? Why didn't you want me touching Hinata? Really, by now, Sasuke shouldn't be surprised at how completely idiotic the love of his life could be. Moron, I was talking about Kiba touching you. Across the table, Hinata began choking violently on the drink she'd just taken. Neji rubbing gently on her back, trying to calm his sputtering cousin. Naruto's face blanched before beginning to redden again as Sasuke stepped closer, practically whispering in his ear, "Although, I'm not particularly thrilled with the idea of you touching anyone but me." Placing his hands squarely in Sasuke's chest, Naruto pushed, knocking the Uchiha squarely on his ass. "Teme, you need to stop teasing me." "Who's teasing?" Although no one else had heard the words which earned Sasuke such a violent shove, Sakura could only imagine and rolled her eyes while walking over to give Sasuke a hand up. While leaning over, she whispered, "Sasuke, you and I need to have a serious discussion later." Sasuke stared at Sakura. "Why? Just come and talk to me before you ruin everything." "I'm not ruining anything." "Right, because the man you love is jumping at the chance to marry you." Sasuke felt his jaw tighten. If he was honest, things weren't going exactly smooth. Although it was true Naruto couldn't refuse his request, he also didn't want to force the blonde into doing anything either. Well, that wasn't completely true. He had no problems forcing him if that was the only way to secure Naruto as his. But, although he enjoyed fighting with his dobi, an entire lifetime of nothing but that wasn't all that appealing. Not nearly as appealing as having all that blonde hair and tanned skin spread out underneath him, writhing in expectant need, groaning and begging for more. Damn, but his pants were beginning to feel uncomfortable. A simple nod of his head was the only admittance he'd give Sakura that he needed her help. Thankfully, she didn't ask for more as she tugged on Sasuke's wrist, leading him to the table, sitting him down next to a still fuming Naruto as she took the seat on Sasuke's opposite side. Silently, Lee took the cue and came to sit on Sakura's free side. Finally recovering from the shock of what was just said, Kiba leaned across the table, his hand cupping his lips as he asked, "Hey, what's going on between you and the Ice Princess?" Naruto shook his head, not even beginning to know where to start. "Just do me a favor and drop it." Kiba shook his head. "No way, this is the most interesting thing that's happened in this village since the jackass came back." "Kiba," Naruto growled. Hinata's delicate hand came to rest on Kiba's arm, instantly grabbing his attention. "Kiba-kun, could you please leave Naruto-kun alone?" Sitting back down in his seat, Kiba couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. Hinata was so careful about everyone else's feelings, something his big mouth had never been good at. "Sure, whatever you want, Hina." Giving a soft smile, Hinata moved her hand down Kiba's arm, entwining their fingers together. "Thank you." Sasanaru 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 Sasanaru. Naruto stared at the utter bliss and contentment washing over Kiba's face and felt a deep pang of something close to loss. He was pretty sure he'd never felt that way about anyone, and he was equally as certain nobody had ever loved him that much. Certainly no one had cared about him enough to touch him in such an intimate manner. Not moving his head, Naruto's eyes darted to the raven-haired man sitting beside him. Sasuke Uchiha, his best friend, the person who meant everything and more, the Teme he'd spent years of his life trying to track down and bring back home. The man who'd hurt him more than he'd ever thought possible. And now, this person said they wanted to marry him. Why, he had no idea and somehow doubted he ever would. But at the end of the day, Sasuke's reasons didn't really matter. There never would be a wedding. Even if the two of them didn't kill each other first, the council would never allow the union. Maybe if Sasuke wasn't the last Uchiha, they would have. But not now. Even if they could get over the idea of having no more Uchiha progeny, they'd never accept a demon-carrying vessel as the accepted mate of one of their most precious clan's last warriors. The whole thing was just emotionally draining and pointless. "Dobi, you're thinking too much again." "Shut up, bastard. This is all your fault." "My fault?" Completely misreading what was bothering Naruto, Sasuke said, "I heard what Kiba asked you. I don't mind if you tell everyone we're officially engaged." Naruto's mouth dropped open before closing, sucking in a hissing breath. "Why would I tell him that? It's never going to happen." Sasuke felt his eyebrows go up. Hadn't Tsunade told him he didn't have a choice? "I'm from the Uchiha clan, Naruto. The request is official, you don't have the option of turning it down." Naruto rounded on him, his blue eyes furious. "Asshole, I know that. Then why do you think we won't be married?" Opening his mouth, Naruto had a list of reasons he was ready to throw at the Uchiha, but all of them died on his lips. This wasn't the time and it most certainly wasn't the place. Slumping his shoulders, Naruto turned, looking down at the empty table. "We'll talk about it later." Right now I just want to get tonight over with and go home. Naruto. But servers had started coming in, their trays brimming with food, ending any discussion Sasuke wanted to have. It didn't take long for Naruto's mood to change, at least it appeared that way to everyone at the table. Both quick to anger, Naruto and Kiba were used to starting and ending fights in rapid succession and settled into an easy banter, each teasing the other with good-natured jibes and jokes, an atmosphere Hinata seemed to thrive in. Although their conversation was a bit more one-sided, both Neji and Lee appeared to be engrossed in some type of perceived competition, with Lee claiming he could twirl his chopsticks over 1,000 times without dropping them. Never once claiming Lee couldn't, Neji nevertheless found himself defending his position that he could do the same. With everyone's attention elsewhere, Sakura attempted to steer Sasuke in a direction leading somewhere besides disaster. So, what's your great plan? You know what my plan is. Sakura rolled her eyes. Yes, I know you've forced Naruto into an engagement, but how do you plan on getting him to accept you as more than a rival and friend? I'm working on it. Oh yes, as I said earlier, I can see how well that's going. Sasuke continued staring at his food, his narrowed eyes drifting towards his pink-haired friend. Are you saying I'm failing? Miserably. Sasuke could feel his shoulders go rigid. Uchihas didn't fail, they excelled. He only found out about my intentions yesterday and already were on a date. I'd hardly call that failure. Sakura sighed. Naruto wasn't the only moron in the room. Speaking of that, could you have picked a worse way of going about this? You know how he is. Naruto doesn't take well to being told what to do. Add on the fact that he doesn't completely trust your motivations. If the positions were reversed and Hokage-sama ordered you to marry someone, that could never happen. Why? Because I'm an Uchiha. Oh, and because Naruto isn't from an honored clan gives him less rights? So the law says. And so you simply reinforced it. You're doing what you always do. You're making him feel like he's less than you. That he's not worthy, not good enough for his feelings and wishes to be taken into consideration. Sasuke swallowed the barely chewed food in his mouth, feeling every inch of its aching descent. Deep down, he knew Sakura had a point, a very good point. The law allowing him to force marriage upon whoever he wanted was antiquated and wrong. But since it served his purposes, he hadn't thought twice about invoking his rights, and thus eliminating Naruto's. But looking over at Naruto's bright blue eyes and expressive body as he teased Kiba, Sasuke knew he wouldn't change what he'd done, not if it got him what he wanted. Naruto was right. Uchiha Sasuke was a bastard. Looking back down at his plate, Sasuke wasn't about to admit Sakura was right. Instead, he simply gave the reasons for his actions. He's mine. He's what I want. Sakura sat back in her chair, amazed by both the coldness and frankness with which Sasuke had just spoken. But what about what he wants? Earlier you said Naruto loves me, so what makes you think I'm not what he wants? Oh Sasuke, I do think Naruto loves you. And, I think if we can get this whole mess you've created straightened out, that you'll be just about the best thing ever for each other. But what I want you to understand, is that you've dug yourself a huge, unnecessary hole. Why couldn't you have taken it slower? Asked him out on a date before filing a request for marriage. Sasuke could feel his face tighten as a single word slipped out, sigh. Sigh? What does he have anything to do with this? He is a symptom of a larger problem. Huh? Sai is interested in Naruto, as are many others. Naruto's just too much of a moron to realize. I think I'd call him more naive regarding people's affections. Sasuke shrugged, whatever. So, what did Sai do? Closing his eyes to hide the Sharingan flaring to life, Sasuke answered. He grabbed his ass, right in front of me. Oh, well, that's just, I don't know what to say. 2 days later, I filed my request. Sasuke, I don't think Naruto is interested in Sai. I mean, they're friends, sort of, but anything more. I don't care. As stated earlier, the Dobi is mine. No one else gets to touch him. Our marriage will make certain everyone in the village knows who Naruto belongs to. Belongs to? Kami, you are possessive. Sakura thought in silence, weighing what she'd just been told. Certainly, a part of her was disturbed by Sasuke's thinking, but then again, he was an Uchiha and in the end, she figured that kind of thinking was kind of ingrained in him. Besides, if there was anyone on the planet who could stand up to Sasuke Uchiha, it was one Naruto Uzumaki. Okay, let's forget how this all started. What's done is done. But you need to change tactics if you want more than Naruto's wrath. You do want more than that, don't you? Of course. Good, because if there's anybody who deserves more, it's him. Agreed. So, what are you doing after dinner? Sasuke shook his head, thinking back to what Naruto had said earlier about just wanting to get this evening over with and go home. I don't know. Right now, I don't think I can get the Dobi to do anything else tonight. Now who's admitting defeat? Careful, Sakura. Waving a dismissive hand in the air, Sakura ignored the threat. You need to get him back to your place. And just how do you suggest I do that? Giving an evil smirk, Sakura winked. You let me take care of that. Sasuke raised a single eyebrow, re-evaluating the deviousness of his former teammate as he whispered, interesting. Don't look so surprised, Sasuke-kun. I can be underhanded when the occasion calls for it. Evidently, Sakura only smirked, not as good as an Uchiha smirk, but it definitely had merit, making Sasuke think Lee might be in a little over his head. So, I'll take care of getting him there, but once I leave it's all up to you. And what do you suggest I do tonight? Force him into submission? Not exactly. Sasuke was shocked. He thought Sakura would try and thump the back of his head for even suggesting what he just had, but instead, she seemed to think it a reasonable suggestion. I'm listening. The way I see it, you need to accomplish 2 things tonight. 1. Get Naruto to believe you're sincere in your feelings. And 2. Get him comfortable with your advances. Meaning? He needs to be able to tolerate you touching him, otherwise, this relationship isn't going to go anywhere. HN indeed. And how do you suggest I accomplish these things? Simple, what can Naruto never say no to? Besides ramen or a chance to kick my ass? Yes, a challenge. Sakura smiled evilly, exactly. Naruto huffed again as he stared at his chatty pink-haired friend. It seemed as if Sakura had been talking non-stop since they'd left the restaurant. Oi, Sakura-chan, tell me again why we have to do this tonight. Sighing dramatically, Sakura stared up into the night sky before looking hopelessly into Naruto's obviously annoyed eyes. For the last time, Naruto, I want to blossom off the Yokaba tree in Sasuke's backyard. This is the only time of year its blooms are fertile enough to be planted. Yeah, but why do I have to go too? Because, the most fertile blossoms are at the very top of the tree. And, if the tree senses any direct contact, it immediately closes up the blossoms and pulls them into itself, underneath the bark. So, we can't climb it to get one. We need you to do your multi-shadow clone jutsu to form a ladder of sorts to reach the top of the tree. Naruto blew out a breath while stuffing his hands in his pockets. But won't they still be there tomorrow? Sliding up next to her friend, Sakura was careful to keep a comfortable space between them before turning puppy dog eyes up towards Naruto. Won't you do this for me? Please, Naruto. Slowly, a small grin spread across Naruto's face. Sakura rarely asked him for anything, and she was one of his best friends. Okay, Sakura-chan, anything for you. Sasuke had been listening intently to the conversation going on behind him as they all made their way to his home. Of course, he'd made sure to act like he was doing anything but listening. Still, his face deepened into a fierce scowl at how Naruto allowed Sakura to manipulate him, even if it was done for Sasuke's benefit. He didn't like it. Once again it reminded him how much he'd missed in those years he was gone. Walking past the main gate, Sasuke headed for his front door, key in hand. Staring up at the fixed door, Naruto couldn't help but be impressed. Oi, Teme, that was fast. As if I'd let my front door remain in the living room for long. Why was your door in the living room? Sakura asked, genuinely confused. Ask the Dobi. Naruto? A fierce blush was already radiating across Naruto's face as Sakura turned to look at him. She watched as one of his hands reached back to scratch his head. Well, sort of broke it down. You what? Yeah. Well, I was kind of upset, and... That's an understatement. Soon, Naruto's red face wasn't due to embarrassment, but anger as he turned on Sasuke. Teme, I think we've already established that it was your fault. Sasuke only leaned back on his heels, stuffing his hands in his pockets as he flatly stated, I offer no apologies. No, you never do, Naruto responded, fairly close to growling. Sensing the obviously growing tension, Sakura stepped between them, smiling brightly. So, Sasuke-kun, about the Yokaba tree. Turning the key in the door, Sasuke allowed his friends inside, immediately walking through the living room and down a small hall which led to the back courtyard. Never once did he look back to make sure he was being followed. Nor did he bother saying anything as he stepped outside and headed to the very back of the garden, standing beside a large tree trunk. Crossing his arms over his chest, Naruto was ready to get this over with and head home. Never had he felt this incredibly tired, at least not this kind of tired. Sure, he'd pushed his body to the point of exhaustion and beyond during battle, but this wasn't a physical kind of exhaustion, it was the emotional kind, and he felt as if he'd been fighting for the last 24 hours. To put it simply, he was beat. Sighing, Naruto grumbled, "So, where's the damn tree so I can get this over with?" "Idiot, you're standing under it." Naruto's blue eyes looked at Sasuke with disbelief. He didn't see anything resembling a tree, well, except for that enormous trunk behind. Oh. Straining his neck, Naruto tilted his head back until he thought he might fall over on his back for the effort. "Kami-sama, how high is that thing?" High enough. It's the oldest Yokaba tree in the leaf. Che, of course it is. After all, it's on Uchiha land. Sasuke's smirk was pure arrogance. Damn right. Rolling his eyes yet again, Naruto turned to Sakura. "So, this blossom thing is at the top? The higher up you can get one, the better chance I'll have of actually getting the thing to grow." "Right." And without further thought, Naruto performed the hand seals for his multi-shadow clone jutsu, and suddenly there were over 50 blonde-haired, blue-eyed kitsune vessels littering Sasuke's garden. "Okay guys, the mission is to form a ladder, and without touching the tree, get me to the highest branch possible so we can get Sakura-chan what she wants." "Consider it done," came over 50 voices, causing Sasuke to almost cover his ears. Sure, he wanted Naruto, but one dobi was definitely enough. Both Sakura and Sasuke watched as the Narutos climbed on top of each other, each standing on the lower one's shoulders until only the original Naruto was left. Giving a small wave and a triumphant smile, he began climbing up his clones, the whole mass of them swaying dangerously in the non-existent breeze. Once he'd reached the top, Naruto was pleased to see that they were indeed in the very highest part of the tree, and right before him was one of Sakura's precious blossoms. "Naruto, do you see one?" came Sakura's distant voice. "Yeah, right in front of me. It will just take a second." Those words had barely left Naruto's mouth before Sakura looked at Sasuke and quietly whispered, "Be ready," and before he had a chance to ask why, the pinkette accidentally tripped over a rock which wasn't there, her body careening into the very bottom Naruto. Sasuke watched with a mixture of awe and horror as the Naruto ladder began tumbling down, each of the clones disappearing with a small puff of smoke. Looking up, his eyes scanned the canopy above for the real thing. Activating his Sharingan, Sasuke finally found what he wanted, and was only mildly surprised to find Naruto cradling the blossom he'd managed to snag instead of trying to save his own ass as it tumbled through the high tree branches above. With a mutter of, "Idiot," Sasuke took off, leaping into the tall tree while angling his body to grab his blonde dobi. Thankfully both of them landing on the ground with only minor injuries to one Uzumaki and one expensive, silky blue shirt. "Sasuke, Naruto, are you alright?" Sasuke muttered while continuing to cradle Naruto in his arms. "Oh, Naruto, I'm so sorry. Sometimes I'm just so clumsy." It's lucky Sasuke has such quick reflexes. Lucky my ass. "Oi, Teme, put me down." But Sasuke only held Naruto more closely, inhaling deeply as he tried to memorize every nuance of his scent. "I don't know Dobi, do you think you can stand on your own?" "Asshole, of course I can." Sighing, Sasuke complied, crossing his arms across his chest as he stared at Naruto's appearance. "Naruto, don't worry about not getting a blossom." "Sakura, how could you doubt me? Of course I got what you wanted, and not only that, but it was the one at the very top of the tree." Grinning madly, Naruto unfolded his arms, revealing a small flower, each and every one of its magenta and blue petals intact, not a single blemish marring its beauty. While Naruto proudly stared down at the flower in his hands, he missed the fist coming towards his head, and was taken completely off guard as a firm whack rang through the night. "Ouch, what the hell was that for Sakura?" Naruto asked while rubbing the back of his throbbing head. "Moron, you could have been killed. Just look at your shirt. Next time, protect yourself, not some stupid flower." Naruto's face fell as his mouth gaped open. But I thought, you thought what? That some flowering tree means more to me than you? Reaching up to scratch his head, Naruto looked down at his beautiful blue shirt and winced at the tears crisscrossing the fabric, along with a splash of crimson here and there for good measure. Contrary to what some of the villagers thought, he did bleed the same color as any normal human. Sakura, Without another word, he shoved the flower at Sakura, glad to be rid of something which looked so innocent but was obviously causing so many problems. Sakura's eyes darted to the stoic man standing behind Naruto and her voice softened. I'm sorry I hit you, it's just, you need to take better care of yourself. You're not as indestructible as you think, and I should know after all the times I've had to patch you up. Naruto's lidded blue eyes finally lifted from the ground and Sakura was sure there was moisture in them. Okay Sakura-chan, I'll try and remember. I don't want you to worry. Considering this whole fiasco was her fault, Sakura felt a pang of guilt hit her. All she'd wanted to do was get Naruto into intimate contact with Sasuke. Truly, there had never been any real danger, but she hated the way Naruto put her desires above his own safety. And it wasn't just her he did that with, but anyone he cared about. Even people he didn't know. One day, it was going to get him killed. In her heart of hearts, she wanted nothing more than to embrace him, but knew how uncomfortable Naruto would be with the show of affection. Smiling, Sakura grasped the delicate blossom in her hands, careful to keep it as safe as the man in front of her had. It's okay, Naruto. And, thank you. It really means a lot to me to have this. Instantly, Naruto's mood brightened. Where are you going to plant it? A soft blush lit Sakura's cheeks. Well, you see, Lee bought a home recently and he and I have gotten, well, you know. I thought that maybe I'd plant it there. I think bushy brows would like that. Yeah, me too. A barely audible grunt from Sasuke brought Sakura's mind back to the task at hand and she began making her excuses to leave. Well, I really need to get going. The sooner I get this into the ground, the more likely it will be to germinate. You're going to plant it tonight? Sakura nodded her head vigorously. Yes, absolutely, as she began running through the courtyard on her way back to the house. Before she got to the door, Sakura turned and threw a small vial towards Sasuke, something he caught easily. Sasuke-kun, I trust you can take care of Naruto's wounds without me. That's a cream Shizune made that should help the cuts heal faster. I don't need the bastard's help. Sakura rolled her eyes. Have you already forgotten what we were just talking about? Just do me a favor and let Sasuke clean up your wounds before you go home. I'll worry less if you agree. Damn, Sasuke thought, but Sakura was good. There was no way the Dobi could say no to her. Shifting on his feet, Naruto grumbled his acceptance, his blue eyes narrowing as they stared at Sasuke's deceptively bored face. Good, I'll see you both later. Try not to kill each other tonight. And with that, Sakura headed inside and out the front door. Once she was out of earshot, she murmured, "Take that, Shikamaru. You're not the only master planner in this village." Sensing Sakura was well on her way home, Sasuke started making his way towards the house, only this time, Naruto wasn't following him. Are you going to stand out here all night, Dobi? Stop calling me that. And yeah, maybe. Moron, why would you do that? Sasuke watched the emotions flood across Naruto's expressive face, showing more in a matter of seconds than his did in an entire year. And as these feelings warred inside, Naruto's hands grabbed at the fabric of his shirt, fingering one of the many tears. Even though Sasuke was a genius, he was fairly certain it didn't take one to figure out something was bothering his blonde. Naruto, what's wrong? Aren't you mad? Mad? Why? Grabbing the edges of the shirt, Naruto held it out and as far away from his body as the fabric would allow. Look at what I did. Sasuke grunted. Dobi, it's just a shirt. Wrong answer. Naruto's face fell, his blue eyes filling with something akin to painful anger. Bastard. It's not just a shirt to me. It was a present from you. Do you know how many presents I've gotten in my life? Sasuke stood, unsure what to say. He'd known Naruto liked the shirt. Hell, Sasuke'd liked it too. It made his blonde look damn. But what he'd failed to realize was Naruto didn't just like the shirt because it was beautiful, but because it was a gift. Evidently something he rarely received. Naruto turned his head, staring off into the distance as silence filled the air around them. Rubbing the back of his hand under his nose, he wondered how the bastard could be so callous about what he'd done. Maybe Sasuke wasn't mad at him, but Naruto was mad at himself. He'd been so focused on protecting Sakura's gift, that he'd allowed his own to suffer the consequences. Swallowing hard, Naruto stuffed his hands in his pockets and began walking towards the house, trying his best to ignore his mangled emotions. Forget it, Teme. I'm sorry I ruined the shirt. Sasuke's black eyes followed Naruto's movements as he remained rooted to the ground, still unsure of what to say. But one thing was clear, given the blonde's movements, he was fairly sure Naruto had no intentions of staying, despite what Sakura had said. Where are you going? Naruto sighed. Home, but you're still bleeding. Your point? Che, at least let me treat your wounds. Naruto shook his head. No need, we both know I'll be healed by morning. Naruto, do you think I enjoy facing Sakura's wrath any more than you do? That did make Naruto stop, but only for a second. Well, if neither of us tell her I left, then she'll never know. Sasuke felt his heart racing. He had to think of something quick, and then, just like that, he felt his body relax as his pulse slowed, a small, bastardly smirk settling on his lips. Dobi, if you really feel that bad about the shirt, then the least you can do is let me keep my promise to Sakura. Bingo. Naruto turned, his face scrunched up into something unpleasant, something full of guilt. Fine. Fine? Yes, damn it. Do whatever you want, just do it quickly. Sasuke lifted an eyebrow. Whatever I want? Pervert, that's not what I meant and you know it. Running a frustrated hand through his hair, Naruto said more to himself than Sasuke. Kami, I'm so damn tired. Sasuke felt his smirk turn into a frown. Now that they were in the house, with the lights on, he could see the worn look on Naruto's face. He looked like he hadn't slept much at all last night, and more than that, his eyes appeared dull and distant. Neither of which belonged anywhere near those oceans of blue. Take the shirt off and sit down on the couch while I get some supplies. Sasuke barely saw Naruto nod before taking off to gather a bowl of warm water and some fresh bandages. He wanted some time to think without the sight of bright blonde hair and dull blue eyes distracting him. Maybe it would be best to simply clean up his wounds and send Naruto on his way. His friend looked beat and Sasuke was fairly certain keeping him here any longer would simply be selfish. But as he descended his stairs and came face to face with all that tanned, muscular body sitting in his living room, any thoughts of decency went running and screaming from his brain. Kami, but Naruto was beautiful. Pushing down the blush he felt radiating across his face, Sasuke schooled his features into an apathetic mask which only his dark eyes betrayed. Sitting down in front of Naruto, he tried to focus on the source of the crimson trails leaking down all that gorgeous skin. But when his hands brushed said skin, Naruto flinched, and Sasuke knew it wasn't from the pain. Hold still. I am. Sasuke sat back on his heels. No, you're not. Every time I come close to touching your skin, your body flinches. It does not. Like hell. Well, maybe I just don't like the idea of you touching me. Sasuke dipped a cloth into the bowl of warm water he'd brought and started cleaning Naruto's chest again. I might believe that if I were the only one you acted that way with. Now you're just hallucinating. Che, really? Because I think you're just scared. Every muscle running underneath Sasuke's hands tensed, and he vaguely wondered if rock would shatter against Naruto's chest. What did you say? Sasuke reached for the vial of cream Sakura had given him. As far as he could tell, there was only one cut which would actually need bandaged as all the rest were fairly minor. You heard what I said. Yeah, I heard it. I was trying to give you a chance to take it back before I kick your ass. Wrapping the worst wound with a clean bandage, Sasuke sat back, his black eyes narrowing as they focused in on their target. 1. You couldn't kick my ass if you tried. And 2. It wouldn't matter if you could, you'd still be scared. Naruto seethed. Bastard. You have no idea what you're talking about. No? Then prove me wrong. What? How? Going up on his knees, Sasuke placed a hand on either side of Naruto's legs, not touching him, yet. I'll bet you can't stand letting me touch you, not even for 5 minutes. Is that a challenge, asshole? So what if it is? By now, Sasuke's face was but a few inches away and Naruto was beginning to panic. Never before had he backed down from a challenge, but this was just different. Shifting his eyes from side to side, he couldn't help the anxiety radiating through his body. See, scared. Instantly, Naruto's cold blue eyes came back to meet Sasuke's. Like hell, I'm scared of you. Does that mean you accept? There was no way he'd admit his weakness, and yes, Naruto knew it to be a weakness. Closing his eyes, he leaned back into the couch, not trusting his own voice as he simply nodded his assent. Sasuke watched Naruto's reaction and felt something tighten in his gut. The anticipation he felt at finally being allowed to touch his most precious possession, and yes, he did consider Naruto his possession, was beyond exhilarating, but beyond that was Naruto's reaction. Sasuke had never seen the Dobi so unsure and so unable to hide his trepidation. Although he wanted nothing more than to take those plump, red lips into his own while running his hands all over bronzed skin and straining muscle, he knew that was a path whose only outcome would be failure. No, what he needed now wasn't brute force, but carefully controlled restraint. Uchiha Sasuke had to be very, very careful of how he handled this situation. Leaning ever forward, Sasuke moved his hands up to either side of Naruto's face, still not touching him as he braced his body against the back of the couch. "Naruto, look at me." But Naruto's eyes remained stubbornly closed. "Naruto, please, look at me." Slowly, golden eyelashes flitted up like butterfly wings, revealing cerulean orbs swimming in a lake of unshed tears. Of all the things he'd seen and done since the slaughter of his clan, Sasuke thought this might just be the most painful one to his heart. Kami, he didn't want to hurt the Dobi, but this was necessary. Not just for his own goals, but for Naruto's well-being as well. "Listen, I'm just going to touch. Nothing else and nothing below the belt, okay?" Sasuke held a finger to Naruto's lips, silencing him. "It's okay. Just try and relax. Not every touch is meant in violence." Ever so slowly, Sasuke moved his body up until he was straddling Naruto's thighs with his own, gently easing his weight down to settle upon those muscular legs. Once he was sure Naruto wouldn't throw him off, he began sliding his finger away from those soft lips and towards the whiskered scars running along Naruto's cheeks, tracing their lines as they faded away. As Sasuke's fingers moved, Naruto took a shuddering breath, allowing a single tear escape, his body racked with uncontrolled shivers. Leaning down, Sasuke brushed his lips against that solitary tear, tasting its salty flavor before moving, laying feather-light kisses down Naruto's cheek and neck until finally he was whispering into his ear. "Shush, it's okay. Let me make it better. Let me take away the loneliness, the pain." Doesn't it feel good?" Sasuke asked, his hands trailing downward, lightly running his fingertips over well-muscled abs. "It hurts," came Naruto's plea-filled voice, stopping all motion. Looking down, Sasuke stared at where his hands were. He'd been careful to avoid Naruto's injuries, and he doubted that even if he'd hit them dead on they'd have hurt. Cocking his head to the side, Sasuke asked, genuinely confused, "What hurts?" Naruto's eyes were closed again. "My chest." Inside, Sasuke ghosted his hand up, laying it on top of Naruto's furiously beating heart. "Where? In here?" Naruto nodded. "It feels so tight, and I don't know how to make it stop." Dropping his head, Sasuke removed his hand and replaced it with his lips, earning a small moan from the man he was straddling. "There's a way to make it stop hurting, Naruto." "How? How can you be so sure?" Because I used to hurt too." "Really? How did you fix it?" "Moron, I didn't. You did." Naruto's eyes shot open, only to come face to face with endless black night. "Sasuke?" Tapping his fingers over Naruto's heart, Sasuke's eyes grew distant. "I knew this pain. I felt as if it would never go away, like it was a never-healing wound. But then one day, a scab formed, and instead of picking at it like I normally did, I let it stay. And slowly, the scab turned into a thin sheet of fresh skin. It was fragile, but I kept it well protected, nurturing the delicate tissue until it was strong enough to stand on its own. And, when that day came, I went to the Hokage, because I never wanted to be apart from the person who healed me." Naruto's heart felt as if it might explode out of his chest at any moment while fresh tears streamed unchecked down his cheeks. Sucking in a painful breath, he hardly knew what to say, but thankfully found no words necessary. Bringing his hands up to cup Naruto's cheeks, Sasuke wiped at the streaks of wetness. "Naruto, stay with me tonight." Panic began filling Naruto's body. He wasn't ready for something like that. "Sasuke, I'm not. I don't think. Dobi, not like that. Although, make no mistake, eventually I want that and more. But for tonight, just lay in bed with me. Let me hold you while you sleep." Naruto felt confused. You just want to hold me? Why? Sasuke let his head drop until both their foreheads were touching. Because, I can. Because all those years I was gone I had to push you as far away as I could, and now, I don't have to. Now, I can finally have you near me. Naruto, don't you see, neither one of us has to be alone anymore. Naruto felt his eyelids slide closed as a shiver ran through his body. To never have to be alone again. To have someone to come home to, someone who was always waiting for you. And, to have that person be Sasuke. It was more than he could have ever hoped for. More than he ever dared wish for. Naruto? Sasuke was beginning to get worried. Okay, Teme. But just for the record. I win. Win? Yeah, you said I wouldn't last 5 minutes, but I think it's been at least 10. Sasuke felt his fingers tighten around the back of Naruto's neck before releasing him, standing up while whispering, moron. Reaching out a hand, Sasuke laced his fingers with Naruto's, pleased when the blonde failed to flinch. Come on, let's get you in bed before I have to carry you upstairs. Taking off only his shirt, Sasuke crawled into his large bed, pulling back the sheets while patting the empty spot beside him. Giving the barest of blushes, Naruto crawled in, curling up against porcelain white skin. Soon enough, the tension eased out of his body and he snuggled deeper into Sasuke's warmth, not even caring when the last surviving Uchiha laid an arm over his broad chest, pulling him even closer. As sleep took them both, Naruto couldn't help but feel the knot in his chest begin to loosen. Vaguely, he thought sleeping this close to his best friend should feel more awkward, but no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't seem to muster up that emotion. And by the time his eyelids closed for good, Naruto was convinced that sleeping in a bed with Sasuke was just about as far from wrong as one could get. Naruto woke up feeling warm, vaguely noting that his head and chest were laying against something harder than his normal mattress, and yet it felt better than any bed ever had. A sound was playing in his ear, a soft and steady beating which distantly reminded him of a drum he'd once heard on a mission. But unlike the one in his memory, this sound was pleasant. More than pleasant, it was soothing. And that wasn't the only thing. He could feel a light pressure against his scalp as his hair was lifted and carded. Kami, but if this were a dream, he never wanted to wake up. Snuggling deeper into the warmth below him, Naruto heard a contented sigh and could no longer keep his eyes closed. When they opened, he found himself staring across a pale field of flesh mingled together with dark blue sheets. Blinking too many times, his mind tried catching up to his eyes, wondering what on earth could have happened last night which would have ended up with him lying in bed with Sasuke. Holy shit, Sasuke. Without further warning, Naruto shot up in bed, forcefully pushing his pillow as far away from his body as possible. Soon there was a loud thump on the floor, followed by a string of curses. Idiot, what the hell was that for? Crawling towards the edge of the bed, Naruto sheepishly peeked over the corner, staring down at a very angry Uchiha. Scratching the back of his head, Naruto tried for an apology. Sorry Teme. I was just a little surprised. Was all Sasuke could manage to say as he rubbed the back of his head, trying to massage away the lump that was forming. Only moments before, he'd been comfortably laying in bed with the only person he'd ever allow within 50 feet of the structure. The day had started so well and then Naruto had to go and be, well, Naruto. Narrowing his angry eyes, Sasuke slowly got up, his irritation well evident. Oi, I said I was sorry, what more do you want? Suddenly, Sasuke's anger diffused into something else, something much more dangerous. Looking down into Naruto's innocently wide eyes, he couldn't help the blood rushing from the head on top of his neck, to the one much lower down. Damn, how did anyone look that fuckable this early in the morning? Naruto saw the shift in his best friend's eyes and knew he was in trouble. Slowly, he began backing up on the bed. Sasuke, what more do I want? That is what you asked, isn't it? An uncontrolled shiver ran down Naruto's body, and it was due to anything but the cold. Teme, why are you looking at me like that? Like what, Naruto? Kami, Sasuke had practically purred his name. Naruto's eyes slid shut, only to shoot back open when he felt Sasuke's weight dip the mattress. Uzumaki Naruto, at a loss for words. Never in my life did I think that would happen. Naruto wanted to say something, hell, he wanted to scream something, but by now, Sasuke's body was hovering mere inches above his own and he could feel his Tame's breath ghosting across his skin. cat got your tongue? Sasuke asked, allowing his hips to drop, rubbing his very hard erection against Naruto's leg, earning him a gasp of surprise before a desperate moan. Nibbling on Naruto's ear, Sasuke whispered, "Too bad, because I have so many other uses for it." Sass, Naruto whined, his breathing erratic and uneven. Sasuke's mind was in overdrive. Naruto was below him, practically begging for more. The hardness forming between the blonde's legs was testament to the fact that he wanted this. But at the same time, a deep fear could be felt radiating from his quaking body. And with that knowledge, Sasuke knew it was too soon. If he took Naruto now, there would be repercussions, and not the good kind. Sasuke didn't want to give the Dobi any chance of feeling regret. And so, with a heavy sigh, Sasuke sat up, easing his body off the one he so desperately wanted to claim, to posse's. "I'm going to take a shower," Sasuke mumbled, adding in his own head, "a very cold shower," before walking into the bathroom and shutting the door. "Fuck," Naruto practically screamed as soon as he heard the shower turn on. What the devil had that been? 2 days ago, he never would have thought this possible. Had, in truth, never thought of Sasuke as anything but an arrogant bastard whom he both hated and loved with almost equal passion. But the love he'd felt had been one of friendship, obsessive friendship, but friendship nonetheless. Sitting up, Naruto looked down at his tent-pitching cock and sighed, "Well, shit. How in the hell am I gonna take care of this?" Scrunching up his nose, Naruto brought up an image of Guy and Lee, together, and just like that, problem solved. Giving a final shudder of revulsion, Naruto got up. By now, the shower was off and he could hear Sasuke on the other side of the door milling about in whatever cabinet held his interest. Giving a quick look down at his chest, Naruto noted that the injuries he'd incurred last night were healed. "Hey, Teme. Mind if I borrow a shirt? Take whatever you want." As quickly as he could, Naruto rummaged through Sasuke's clothes, noting that everything was either black, white, or blue. Occasionally there was a splash of red, but only when associated with the Uchiha fan. Which, upon closer inspection, was somewhere on every shirt. "Oi, bastard, don't you have anything without that damn symbol?" "No. Shit. Why? Does that bother you?" Suddenly Sasuke's voice was no longer muffled, but very, very clear. Turning around, Naruto thought his eyes might just fall out of his head at the sight of Sasuke's muscled, pale body, casually leaning against the doorframe of the bathroom. A black towel lazily draped around slender hips while beads of water fell from his inky hair. Taking in a hiss of breath, Naruto cursed. He'd just gotten rid of his little problem. He most certainly didn't need that sprouting up again. "Idiot, I asked you a question. Does that bother you?" Naruto scratched the back of his head. No. I mean, it's fine for you. It's just, my house is a long way away and there's a good chance someone will see me, so. So, what? I think it will be pretty obvious what people will think." Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. "As if I care about that. Teme, you should care. You don't want to be associated that way with me." Sasuke's eyelids shot up, making his black eyes look even more like empty pools of emotionless space. But he was far from emotionless. "Naruto, we are going to be married," he said each word slowly and with deep punctuation. But Naruto just shook his head. "Sasuke, I know you think that, but don't you want to be married to me?" Sasuke tried to ignore the sudden fear clenching his gut. Truly, he didn't want to force Naruto into a marriage. He wanted the Dobi to want it as much as him. Or, at the very least, be willing to give it a chance. Naruto stared at the shirt in his hand, his fingers gently tracing over the Uchiha crest. Did he want to marry Sasuke? It was a good question. Yesterday, he would have said no. But last night had been wonderful. Not the getting kicked out of the restaurant part, nor the time when he fell out of the yucca tree and had to be rescued by the Teme. But being held, cuddling up to someone he cared about and feeling like maybe, just maybe, that person felt the same way about him. Kami, but it had been like the most addictive drug. And then, this morning, when Sasuke'd been laying on top of him, feeling the need residing within that stoic Uchiha facade, knowing that he, Naruto Uzumaki, had been the cause of that. Feeling his shoulders slump, Naruto was surprised by his own words. "Yeah, I think that might be nice." Sasuke felt as if he might drop to the floor, his legs suddenly weak with relief. But instead of landing on his ass, he forced his body to move. Leaning down on his knees, he wrapped his arms around Naruto's shoulders, pulling him back into something close to a hug. Well then, what's the problem? Sasuke, things aren't always that simple. Che, I'm an Uchiha. I've requested your hand in marriage and although you didn't have to, you've accepted. What's complicated about it? Naruto sighed. Sasuke was an Uchiha. A very arrogant and stubborn Uchiha, but that very fact was part of the problem. Sasuke was used to getting what he wanted, when he wanted it, especially when it came to the village. But Naruto's experience was completely different and nothing was ever this simple when it came to him. Before he could even let himself get hopeful, he needed to speak with Tsunade. Naruto didn't bother answering Sasuke's question. Besides, he kind of figured it was more of a rhetorical one anyway. Instead, he simply squeezed Sasuke's hands and wiggled his way out of the embrace. I forgot, I need to speak with Ba-chan about something. Sasuke nodded while standing up from the floor. You need to go right now? Yeah, I'll go home and get cleaned up first, but it's important so I'll go there right after. Sasuke found himself staring into Naruto's eyes. He knew something was bothering him, but couldn't quite put his finger on it. Naruto, is everything? A fake, wide grin plastered its way across Naruto's face. Everything's fine, Teme. You worry too much. Sasuke reached up a hand, tracing the scars on Naruto's cheeks, and instead of pulling away, he was pleased to feel the Dobi push his face into his hand. With you, there's always cause to worry. Che, as if you have any room to talk, Naruto said as he stepped away, pulling the shirt in his hand over his head, sending his spiky golden hair into more chaos. Anyway, I better get going. Will you come over later? Naruto stopped and nodded. If I can, and then he left, practically running down the stairs and through the front doors leaving Sasuke alone, thinking the answer he got was better than an outright no. Sasanaru Sasanaru Sasunar Sasanaru 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 Sasu. Naruto flew above the rooftops. Despite Sasuke's assurances, he thought it best to be seen by as few people as possible while the Uchiha crest glared like neon sign off his back. In the end, he was pleased at having come into contact with only a handful of the villagers before slipping into his apartment. Once in his own home, the scent on Sasuke's shirt was even stronger and Naruto buried his nose into the fabric, drinking in the flavor before easing it off his body, carefully folding and laying it on his bed before heading for a quick shower. Unlike when he was a kid, Naruto actually liked showering now and would normally linger under the caressing fluid of the warm water. But today wasn't normal and he was anxious to see Tsunade. No, he was more than anxious. The old hag had more experience with the council and he needed to know if they'd really allow this marriage to occur. As Hokage, Tsunade had a lot of power, but there were a lot of things that needed the council's consent and more often than not, any interest the council took in Naruto was bad. As he was making his way towards Hokage Tower, Naruto tried to allay his fears. Sure, he and Ba-chan irritated the hell out of each other, but deep down, Naruto knew how much he meant to her. He had a hard time believing she'd have agreed to this marriage if she thought the council could truly interfere. Then again, Tsunade had a way of ignoring the rules. It was one of the reasons he respected the newest Hokage. Still, did she really have the option of not telling him? It was law, and Tsunade normally didn't blatantly break those. Nearing his destination, Naruto cloaked his chakra. He'd practically torn her office door from its hinges the last time he was there and he really needed to talk to her. No reason to give Tsunade the opportunity to order him away before he got the chance to see her. It was early enough in the morning that there were precious few people milling about in Hokage Tower. Distantly, Naruto thought back to the third Hokage and wondered at the change. If he were still alive, then the place would already be hopping with activity. Ba-chan, however, kept slightly different hours and it was well known that disturbing her before the sun was at least halfway off the horizon was a bad idea. But considering how busy the Hokage was, Naruto knew this would be his best chance at getting to talk with her alone. Naruto was only 2 hallways away from the Hokage's office when he heard a sickeningly sweet voice purr, "Uzumaki-san, I would not have expected to see you here so early." Turning, Naruto could already feel his anger beginning to boil. Still, he somehow managed to bow as he replied, "Councilman Nagata Kinjin, I see you are here early as well." Waving a dismissive hand in the air, Kinjin's dark brown eyes stared with mischief. "Ah, you know, when one sits on the Council of the Hidden Leaf, there is always work to be done. Then, narrowing his eyes, he continued, I hear congratulations are in order. If Naruto had half Sasuke's discipline, he would have shown no emotion at those loaded words, but Naruto wasn't an Uchiha and his eyes went wide with both fear and surprise. He'd been hoping to speak with Tsunade before one of the council members, let alone this asshole of a council member. But now Naruto feared the proverbial cat was out of the bag. Still, he clung to some kind of stupid hope that Kinjin was referring to something else. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure what you're talking about. Oh, come now Naruto, I think we both know what I'm speaking of. Shugita-san was quite exuberant last night when he came to my home, spouting off about how the last remaining Uchiha planned on marrying the monster of Konoha. I have to say, he was quite animated regarding the tale. Shit. That stupid restaurant owner and his big fucking mouth. It wasn't bad enough he'd thrown Naruto out on his ass last night, but he just had to add insult to injury. Stiffening, Naruto could only stare, trying his best to look through Kinjin instead of at him. I wasn't aware the engagement had become common knowledge. It has not, nor do I believe it will be. Naruto felt his body still, the tightness in his chest returning at an alarming speed. And, why won't it become common knowledge? Kinjin moved closer and Naruto refused to back up, trying his best to ignore the strange look on the councilman's face, along with the degrading tone his voice held. Now, Uzumaki-san. I think we both know the answer to that. Enlighten me, Naruto ground out. Naruto did jerk back when he felt Kinjin's fingers ghost across his face, only to still when Kinjin ordered him not to move. Is it so very difficult to understand? The last Uchiha, married to a creature like you? Of course the council will never allow such a union. I'll admit, at first I was puzzled as to why Sasuke would do this, but when I thought it over, it wasn't hard to find the reason. Closing his eyes, Kinjin grazed the whiskered marks on Naruto's face. Kami-sama, Naruto, your skin's as soft as fur. Is that the demon's influence? Freezing his body, Naruto grudgingly allowed Kinjin's hands on his face, hating the feel of those malicious fingers as they eased down his neck. Ignoring the last question, Naruto forced his mind away from the feel of Kinjin's skin against his own and back towards what he'd said earlier, that he knew Sasuke's reason for wanting to marry him. And, what reason would that be? The only reason Sasuke has ever had for doing anything, power. Naruto laughed, a biting, hateful sound. Power? And how would marrying me give him more of that? Kinjin shrugged. Truthfully, I'm not sure, but given your past history, it is the only plausible answer. He tried to kill you for it, twice actually. So it seems only natural that he's discovered a new way to get it. Pulling his hand up, Kinjin grabbed Naruto's chin, forcing his blue eyes into his own. Maybe fucking you into the ground works just as well. And, if it does, who could blame him for picking such an option? Fisting his hands, Naruto tried to be angry at Kinjin, but the seeds of doubt he just planted were already taking root. Desperately trying to hold onto his increasingly fragile hope, Naruto countered, marriage is hardly a prerequisite for fucking. True, but we all know what possessive bastards Uchihas are known to be. If he really has discovered a way to gain power from you, he'd hardly be willing to share. Naruto swallowed, feeling the dryness of it as the liquid tried making it down his throat. I don't believe a word you say. Smirking, Kinjin heard all too well the doubt lacing Naruto's voice. And, with an increasingly smug look on his face, he answered, oh, yes you do. Finally dropping his hand from Naruto's face, Kinjin took a step back and shrugged. Either way, it makes little difference. The council will never agree. Then, with a wicked smile at some unseen triumph, Kinjin clapped his hands together. However, increasing Uchiha's power would be quite interesting. And, although we wouldn't allow an official marriage, perhaps something else could be arranged. Maybe we could find you a new title, something along the lines of, Uchiha's official whore. Someone only Sasuke could touch. Of course, he'll want to keep you close by to ensure fidelity, so any further missions outside the village will be forbidden. Naruto took a hiss of breath. Fucking asshole. I don't think that's the appropriate way to speak to a member of the council. I would never agree. Yes, you would, and you know it. I can see it in your eyes, the devastating thought that I'm right. And with it another equally disturbing one, the idea that you'd say yes to such an agreement. That you'd agree to whatever terms the Uchiha said just so you can be near him. Oh, I must give credit where credit is due. He's already got you wrapped around his finger. Leaving him now would be suicide to your soul. Kami, but Uchiha is good. Naruto's mouth dropped open slightly, his whole body shaking in fear. IIW would never. Oh, Naruto, you don't sound nearly as sure of yourself as you think. Shish, don't fret. I'll speak with Uchiha. See if we can't work something out which will be agreeable for both the council and his plans. Stepping into Naruto's space once again, Kinjin reached down and grabbed the back of Naruto's head, pulling his face close as he whispered into his ear, and maybe, when he's had his fill of you, he'll be so grateful to the council that he'll allow me a taste as well. Dropping his hand, Kinjin smiled amiably, throwing up a little wave as he said his goodbyes. It was good seeing you, Uzumaki-san. Please, try and have a nice day. Naruto stood in the hall, feeling a cold numbness engulf his soul, a feeling he welcomed with open arms. By the time he approached Tsunade's chambers he felt dead inside. Keeping his mind carefully blank, he couldn't even begin contemplating what the councilman had just said. If he thought long on it, he'd never make it out of the building. His heart, his mind, his very soul would implode from the sheer weight of his pain. Not even realizing how rare it was for him to knock, Naruto's fist made swift contact with the Hokage's door before he heard a harsh, "Do you know what time it is? There better be a fucking fire somewhere." Easily slipping back into default mode, Naruto's grin stretched from ear to ear, but it didn't make it any more real and his eyes remained eerily devoid of any emotion. "Tsunade-sama, it's good to see you too." Tsunade grunted, not even bothering looking up from her paperwork. "Tsunade-sama, since when did you become so formal, brat?" Naruto ignored the question. "Are there any missions out of the village today?" Tsunade kept writing. "What kind of a question is that?" "Of course there are. Any needing a single shinobi?" Tsunade's hand stopped. Never in her life had she had this pleasant of a conversation with the brat. He wasn't being loud, obnoxious, nor overbearing. He'd been polite, soft-spoken, and respectful. Something was wrong. Finally looking up, Tsunade felt her heart go cold. To the casual observer, Naruto looked fine, perfectly normal with his wide grin and casual stance. But the eyes. Kami, those weren't even close to Naruto's normal eyes. "Brat, I asked you a question, Hokage-sama. Are there any missions going out today in need of a single shinobi?" "Naruto, what's wrong?" "Nothing. I simply feel like getting out of the village for a while and I can always use the money." Tsunade wasn't buying it. "Naruto, did something happen with Sasu?" At the very brief shot of overwhelming pain shooting across Naruto's cold, blue eyes, Tsunade couldn't bring herself to even finish the name. "Is that a yes, or no?" "Naruto, yes or no? You're not going to tell me what's going on, are you?" "Yes. Or, no." Tsunade sighed while sitting back in her chair thinking of all the different ways she would be torturing the last Uchiha heir. True, she had no idea what had happened, but only Sasuke had ever been able to make Naruto look this, lifeless. "Yes, I think I have something which might accommodate your needs." Naruto only nodded. Pulling out a scroll, Tsunade rapidly wrote something down, rolled it up and sealed it with the official seal of the Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Handing it to Naruto, she said, "Take this to Suna, it is a personal message for Gaara." "Hi. Thank you, Hokage-sama." Reaching out, Naruto took the scroll and walked from the office, his movements jerky and stilted, never looking behind to see Tsunade's concerned eyes following him as he walked out her door. Nor did he hear her bark Shizune's name a few seconds later. "Shizune, get in here." Within a fraction of a second, Shizune came through a door located to the side of the Hokage's desk. As she rounded it, Shizune noted Tsunade's obvious anger and remained a few steps away. "Yes, Lady Tsunade." With her elbows leaning on her desk, Tsunade let her chin fall between her steepled fingers. "Shizune, I need to speak with Uchiha. Now, I'll send someone to get him right away. Not just anyone, get Hitaki to do it." "Kakashi, you want me to send a Junin to bring Sasuke here? Just do it. Also, I want Guy here as well." "Mato Guy, do you have a hearing problem this morning?" Shizune bristled before blushing. "No, Lady Tsunade." "Then why do you find it necessary to repeat my orders?" I just don't understand. Has Sasuke done something wrong? That's what I'm going to find out. And if he's done anything to hurt the brat, I plan on placing his ass so deep underground that no one will ever find him." And that's why you want Guy and Kakashi, isn't it?" If Uchiha tries to escape, Kakashi has the Sharingan and guys spent years training against it. Tsunade didn't answer, only stared straight ahead, her mind swirling with every possible consequence regarding what she was about to do. Naruto was strong, he'd had to be in order to survive growing up alone in the village, but when it came to Sasuke, well, all bets were off. Cursing silently to herself, Tsunade wondered why she'd ever agreed to the engagement. But even that thought seemed wrong. She knew very well why she'd agreed. Uchiha had seemed so sincere, and in the end, she really did believe the two of them were better together than apart. Only Naruto was capable of getting any type of reaction from Sasuke and Naruto. Naruto just wanted his friend. Although she'd never considered it before the night Sasuke had approached her, once the thought was planted in her head, marriage between the two just seemed right. So, now the question was, what had Uchiha done to so royally screw the whole thing up? Sasanaru 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 Sasu. Sasuke was in one of the best moods of his life. Maybe even the only good mood of his life since the slaughter of his clan. For once, the future didn't seem so defined, so full of duty and destiny. No, now all he saw were possibilities, and it scared the hell out of him. But he was an Uchiha, and if something was scary, then it needed to be conquered. Fear was never a luxury he could afford, and he'd be damned if he'd let it rule any part of his life now. Practicing on the Uchiha's private training grounds, Sasuke felt Kakashi's chakra long before he heard the man speak. Yo! Turning slowly, Sasuke shoved his hands into his pockets, trying for his normal pose of complete and utter boredom. But it appeared as if his good mood simply refused to be shoved into the normal Uchiha emotional box, allowing his dark eyes to sparkle like Kakashi had never seen them before. Sasuke, are you alright? Of course. What kind of a question is that? Kakashi took a step back, taking in his former student's appearance. He didn't know what the Hokage wanted with Sasuke, but from the look on Shizun's face, it couldn't be good. Naturally, he'd assumed Sasuke had done something to incur Tsunade's wrath, but that thought ran contrary to what he saw before him. He hadn't known what to expect when coming to retrieve the last Uchiha, but finding a happy Sasuke hadn't been anywhere on Kakashi's list of possibilities. Shaking his head, Kakashi couldn't help but marvel. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Kakashi searched for a word to describe what he was seeing, shifting through his rather extensive vocabulary with lightning speed, but in the end, the simplest word appeared to be the best. Happy. Whatever. His one exposed eye opened wide in surprise. Sasuke hadn't even tried to deny it. Clearing his throat, Kakashi had to ask, and, what, might I ask, has made you so blissful? With a smug smirk, Sasuke stared at his former teacher. I'm finally going to get something I've been wanting for years. Kakashi stood still, thinking back on what he knew Sasuke's desires to be, but he only knew two. The first was already done, Itachi was dead. The second was to restore his clan. Did you get someone pregnant? Nothing, and I mean nothing, ever shocked Sasuke, but at that moment, none of his previous Uchiha training managed to kick in. Grunting in disgust, Sasuke stared, thinking about just how wrong Kakashi was. No, you idiot. Fucking a girl is hardly high on my priority list. Then with his smug smirk firmly back in place, Sasuke added, fucking a certain blonde doby however. It seemed like Sasuke and Kakashi were going to stand around all morning simply trying to see who could outshock the other. Shit, are you serious? You and Naruto? Not yet, but I think sooner rather than later. You and Naru? Fuck Kakashi, is it so hard to believe? Forcing his mind to calm, Kakashi filtered through his memories regarding his two former students and found that no, it wasn't that hard to believe. As a matter of fact, he'd always suspicioned there was something more going on between the two. Shaking his head, Kakashi finally answered, no, I guess not. Given all the new information he'd been inundated with, Kakashi had almost forgotten the reason why he was here. And suddenly, things started to make a little more sense. If Tsunade knew Sasuke's intentions towards Naruto. Sasuke, please tell me you're in this for more than a quick fuck. Kami, if that's all I wanted, all I'd have to do is walk down the street and pick the first person who batted their eyes at me. Taking a step closer to his old sensei, Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Naruto and I are going to be married. I'm an Uchiha, you know what that means. Kakashi nodded. That you can marry whomever you want. Exactly. A few days ago I placed an official request with the Hokage and she granted it. And, how did Naruto take this request? Sasuke ran a hand through his inky hair. He was upset at first. He didn't think I was serious. Or, more to the point, he thought I was playing some kind of sick joke on him. And now? Sasuke practically beamed, or, at least came as close as an Uchiha ever got to showing that much emotion. Now he knows better. This morning he even said he wanted to marry me. But if he'd never said that, you'd have done it anyway, wouldn't you? Sasuke's silence was answer enough. Giving a heavy sigh, Kakashi practically whispered, Sasuke. Don't start with me. He's what I want. No one else can have him. Placing his head in his hand, Kakashi didn't know what to think. Sasuke's reasoning was just, well, it was just sick and wrong. But just like almost every other time, Sasuke's way of thinking seemed to be working out for him. Shrugging his shoulders, Kakashi decided it was best not to dwell on the subject any longer. I'm glad Naruto appears to be just as obsessed with you as you were with him. If he wasn't, I'd have to kick your ass and I'm sure that won't be as easy as it once was. Not easy? It would be impossible. Yeah, let's just hope we don't ever have to find out. Che, come on, there's actually a reason why I'm here tormenting you. I hadn't realized you needed a reason. Normally, I don't, but today is your lucky day. The Hokage wants to see you, immediately. The Hokage? Why? Sasuke's thoughts began swimming. Naruto had said something earlier about needing to speak with her. Did he ask her to rescind the engagement? But that didn't make any sense. Not after admitting he wanted to get married. Still, there had been something else on Naruto's mind this morning. Slowly, Sasuke could feel all of his good mood fleeing his body. What has the Dobi done now? Kakashi shook his head. No idea. All I know is that you've been summoned. Dawning filtered through Sasuke's eyes. And she sent you to get me. It was a statement, not a question. It appears so. She's expecting trouble, from me. That's a fair bet. 1,001 thoughts went through Sasuke's mind, but all he said was, let's not keep her waiting. Tsunade sat, leaning back in her chair, waiting. Kakashi brought Sasuke in only minutes before and aside from the initial pleasantries of greeting, nothing further had been said. Tsunade had asked Kakashi to stay, and she knew Guy as well as Nara Shikamaru were in the small room Shizune normally occupied, just off to the side of her office. Only this room was unshielded from the noise barrier she'd put in place upon taking her position of Hokage, allowing both Junin complete access to what was said in her office. They'd know if and when they were needed. Hiding their chakras, Tsunade doubted that Sasuke knew they were there. No doubt he figured someone was nearby, but not who. The Hokage had been trying to read something from the Uchiha's stance, eyes, or facial expression. But just like so many other times, Sasuke's appearance was of disinterested boredom, his face a mask of indifference. Someone else might have found it offensive, but Tsunade knew it to be one of his best defense mechanisms. Shaking her head, the Hokage knew he'd give nothing away. Uchiha, do you know why I wanted to see you? No. Do you know why I asked Hitaki to be the one to retrieve you? I can only assume it is because you expect to have to subdue me. That you actually think him capable. Tsunade's eye twitched. The brat was right. Even with Kakashi, Guy, and Shikamaru, actually holding Sasuke Uchiha was going to be next to impossible. Truly, the only one strong enough to stand a chance against him was Naruto, and, well, he was the one person not currently available. You really have no idea? Sasuke grunted. Che, I wouldn't exactly say that. So, you at least have a theory. I can only think of one idiot that would incite you into trying something this stupid. Tsunade's fist made contact with her desk, scattering papers everywhere. Don't call him an idiot. Naruto is far from stupid. The anger didn't surprise Sasuke as much as Tsunade's defense of the Dobi's intelligence did. He'd heard her call Naruto an idiot on more than one occasion. Tsunade was definitely on the defensive, and more to the point, she was protecting Naruto. Protecting him against Sasuke. A cold fear began forming in the pit of Sasuke's belly, leaking out into the rest of his body. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Hokage-sama, has something happened to Naruto? Tsunade's body relaxed at the tone in Sasuke's voice. It was the same one he'd used when requesting the brat's hand in marriage. The reason she'd agreed in the first place. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to get Guy and Shika involved any more than they already were. Cocking her head to the side, Tsunade gave Sasuke an appraising look. I'm not sure, that's why you're here. Sasuke was beginning to get irritated. I don't understand. Well then, that makes two of us. Tell me what happened. When? Why don't we start with the morning I told Naruto about your request and go from there? Sasuke's hands fisted. We don't have time for this. If Naruto's in trouble, he's safe for now. I have him on a personal mission, so you see, we do have time. From the beginning, Uchiha. Closing his eyes, Sasuke begged for patience as he started in on what had been going on the last 2 days. He'd been meaning to file an official complaint against Shugita and his restaurant, so at least this little exercise would eliminate that need. And, he was more than pleased by the string of curses Tsunade let fly when she heard what the ignorant man had said. Beyond that, Sasuke tried to hurry the story along as much as possible while at the same time, attempting to preserve as much of their privacy as he could. At certain parts, Tsunade would ask questions and at others she seemed content with the information she'd been given. Throughout it all, Kakashi remained surprisingly quiet and allowed the two of them to converse uninterrupted. Finally, after what seemed like a lifetime, Sasuke finished by relaying what had happened this morning, being sure to include the fact that Naruto had said he actually wanted to marry him. And that is all I know. The last words we spoke, he said he'd come and see me later today if he could and that he needed to speak with you. Tsunade's elbows were back up on the table, her hands once again steepled with her forehead leaning against her fingertips. But he didn't talk to me, at least, not about anything important. Sasuke decided he'd been patient long enough. He had yet to hear what exactly was going on with his dobi and he was done waiting. Since I've been a good little shinobi and given you a play-by-play of the last 48 hours, perhaps you'd be good enough to fill me in on why Naruto is off on a mission when he should be here, with me. It was impossible to miss the sarcasm seeping from Sasuke's words. Mind your tone, brat, but there was no real malice in Tsunade's words, just confusion. He came in this morning, acting way too polite. I knew something was wrong, but when I looked into his eyes, Kami, they were dead. Emotionless pools of blue. All he did was ask for a mission outside the village. Something requiring a single Junin. I tried to ask what was wrong, but he wouldn't tell me. And naturally, you assumed it must have been something I did. Don't act like I wasn't justified. After all the shit you've put that kid through, Kami, it's a wonder I even let you in the same room with him, let alone approved this marriage. I think, Kakashi interrupted, that what we need to figure out, is what happened between Sasuke's home and your office. Truly, Sasuke was at a loss. How in the hell were they supposed to find something like that out? But when he looked at Tsunade, she seemed to have something in mind. You said that when he left your place, he was wearing your shirt, but when I saw him, Naruto was in his typical street clothes, but not his Junin outfit. So, he went home and changed, but didn't dress like he was anticipating asking for a mission, Kakashi said. Exactly. So I think we can assume that whatever occurred, was between his house and Hokage Tower. It's a pretty short trip from Naruto's apartment to my office, so playing the odds. Something happened after he got here. Tsunade paled. Shit. What? Both Sasuke and Kakashi asked in unison. Shizun's office door creaked open, but Guy and Shika remained hidden within. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Get me Councilman Nagata Kinjin. Now. This time, Shizun offered up no questions and simply ran out of the room, closing the door tightly behind her. Kakashi hissed, Kinjin? You think he has something to do with this? Tsunade looked thoughtful. Kami, I hope not. But Naruto came to see me pretty early this morning. There were only a limited number of people in the tower and Kinjin was one of them. I saw him just a few moments ago and he looked far too pleased with himself over something. Sasuke looked between the two of them. Why do you both look so upset? Kakashi turned towards Sasuke. Knowing the Uchiha's temper, he had to choose his words very carefully. Sasuke, you were gone for a long time. Tell me something I don't know. Councilman Nagata Kinjin may be a member of one of our older clans, but he's not. Well, he's not the Leaf's most moral of citizens. What the hell does that mean? Tsunade cut in. What Kakashi means is that Kinjin isn't Naruto's biggest fan. At least, not in the traditional way, Kakashi added, more to himself than anyone else. Meaning, what? Kakashi sighed. Kinjin has less than noble interests in Naruto's condition. Tsunade grunted. That's putting it kindly. Sasuke's body stilled, his anger taking over. Someone needs to explain. Immediately, Tsunade looked up, seeing the danger signs but choosing to ignore them. Outwardly, Kinjin is one of Naruto's staunchest opponents, but privately, he's fascinated by what Naruto is. I've seen the way he looks at him. Looks at him? I'm not sure how to explain it. Before Tsunade could say any more, there was a firm knock at the door. Lady Hokage? Came Shizun's voice. One moment. Closing her eyes tightly, Tsunade knew what she needed to get Kinjin to admit to, and to do it, she was going to have to say some potentially volatile words. Looking up, Tsunade stared at Sasuke, her eyes deadly serious. Keep your mouth shut and let me handle this. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. If he's done something, if he's hurt Naruto. I know, sighing deeply, Tsunade's eyes softened. Believe me, I know. But for once, I need you to trust me. I need your word that you won't interrupt. And just why should I trust you? Tilting her head to the side, Tsunade squelched the wave of irritation crashing into her. Mutual trust wasn't something she and the last Uchiha had a lot of. Pinning Sasuke with her gaze, Tsunade gave him the only reason she could think of, because Naruto trusts me. Two quick blinks were the only outward sign Sasuke gave indicating he'd heard his Hokage's words. And, in the end, it was the only reason he agreed. Managing a single, quick nod of his head, Sasuke closed his mouth and stared blankly ahead. Despite Sasuke's acceptance, Tsunade looked towards Kakashi, motioning her head towards the raven-haired boy as she said, "You, stand beside him." Without a word, Kakashi moved, but as he did so, he wondered who was going to hold him back if their suspicions were correct. "Come in," Tsunade's voice rang clear, without emotion. As Kinjin surveyed the overall mood in the Hokage's office, he was surprised to see both the Uchiha and Hitaki there as well. But even with their presence, he wasn't really that concerned. He was, after all, a member of the council, untouchable. Not only that, but even without having spoken to the other council members, he was fairly certain their take on the situation would be along the same line as his own thinking. Well, at least to an extent. But Kinjin wasn't about to let his mind wander down that path. No, he'd wait until later, when he was alone to remember the soft texture of Naruto's skin, along with those pain-filled blue eyes. Standing in front of Tsunade's desk, Kinjin took in the Hokage's expression. The barely contained rage was self-evident. Everyone knew the little demon vessel had Tsunade firmly situated in his back pocket. How that could be, Kinjin still didn't understand, but his lack of knowledge didn't change the facts. He shouldn't be surprised the little freak went and told the Hokage about their conversation. No, he knew exactly how the Hokage would take his meddling. What he didn't know was what to expect from the Uchiha. Although he found the idea that Sasuke could actually care for Naruto ludicrous, it was more likely Sasuke would be offended that he'd spoken to Naruto before speaking directly with the Uchiha. Beyond that, he was sure Sasuke would see the wisdom of his overall plan. Bowing slightly, Kinjin decided to get the discussion rolling. After all, as he'd told Naruto earlier, he was a very busy man. "Lady Hokage, how may I be of assistance?" "I'll get right to it. What did you do to Naruto Uzumaki?" "Do? I didn't do anything to the little vessel. You should know that if you've spoken with him. He didn't tell me anything. And, maybe you didn't do anything physical, but you did do something." "So what was it?" Kinjin shrugged, so the brat hadn't told. "Go figure. I simply enlightened him to the realities of his life." "And those would be?" Glancing around the room, Kinjin was honestly puzzled by the overall atmosphere. "I don't know why you're taking that tone with me. Really, I did the boy a favor." "A favor?" Tsunade's voice was deceptively curious. "Yes, a favor." The little monster actually believed Uchiha was serious. At the last, Kinjin snorted and rolled his eyes, indicating his obvious belief in both Naruto's stupidity and naivete. But as his eyes settled on Sasuke's blank mask, Kinjin folded his arms across his chest, resting his chin in his hand as he looked Sasuke up and down. Lowering his arms, Kinjin tilted his head and said, "I am curious about something." "What?" Sasuke barely managed through gritted teeth. "How did you get him to believe it?" "Believe what?" "That you actually cared for him. When I told him your true motives, he seemed surprised and maybe even hurt. Given how many times you've tried to kill him, I'd have thought his trust in you would be a little more jaded." "I have to say, I'm impressed, Uchiha. Sasuke's body froze, his mind a buzzing cauldron of anger mixed with a healthy dose of fear. The fear that Naruto could never forgive him for his past actions. The fear of losing the one thing he held more dear than anything else in this world. Kakashi knew the signs. He could tell Sasuke was shutting down while trying to process the unimaginable horror of what was going on. Is it so hard to believe Sasuke's feelings might be real? Kakashi asked. Kinjin snorted. Che, more like impossible. The only thing he's ever loved is power. He left his friends and village years ago in pursuit of that very thing and even tried killing Naruto to get more. Having failed in that, I can only assume he's found a new way to obtain what he wants. And that would be, Tsunade ground out. I'm not sure, but it must have something to do with this idiot notion of marrying Kyuubi's vessel. When I asked myself what he'd get out of such a union, the only obvious answer was a way to obtain more power while keeping Naruto on a very short leash. Marriage would ensure possession. Maybe fucking Naruto will get Sasuke-sama what he wants. At least that would make some kind of sense. Kakashi felt his body going almost as still as Sasuke and noted that the chances of the councilman getting out of the Hokage's office alive were dropping steadily. Marriage is hardly a prerequisite for fucking. Agreed, and that's exactly what I told Naruto this morning. Sasuke felt his heart stop, missing at least 2 beats. Truthfully, I thought that would be enough to send Naruto running, but he only stared at me, his eyes full of pain. I couldn't leave him like that, so I made a suggestion. Tsunade let out a short, barking laugh. Oh, I can't wait to hear this. Kinjin only glared. I advised Uzumaki that I would speak with the council and see if we could come up with some kind of arrangement. Uchiha becoming more powerful could benefit the village, so even though we would never condone a marriage, perhaps we could come up with a new title for their arrangement. Something like making Naruto, Sasuke-sama's official whore, or perhaps a more polite term of concubine could be used, thus satisfying Uchiha's need for ownership while still allowing him access to Naruto's power. Also, this situation would still allow a proper marriage to a woman of good breeding stock, ensuring a future generation of Uchihas. Of course, I did add in that he'd no longer be allowed on any missions outside the village. I highly doubted Sasuke-sama would want his property out where anyone could have access. I mean, once word gets out that fucking Naruto gains a shinobi some type of power. Kami, you're serious, aren't you? Tsunade asked, still trying to wrap her brain around the fact that someone on her council could have such cruel intentions and thoughts. Why wouldn't I be? Tsunade wanted to look at Sasuke, truly she did, but she didn't dare. She would have to take him at his word that he wouldn't interfere. Unfortunately, she was about to push his restraint to the breaking point. At least, she hoped that was what was about to happen. Tapping her fingers lightly on her desk, Tsunade kept her voice as devoid of emotion as possible. I'm curious, Councilman, how would you feel about Naruto's new status? Status? Yes. Tsunade waved a disinterested hand in the air, you know, his status as the Uchiha's fuck toy. How do you feel about Naruto being claimed by Sasuke? It was hard to miss the red fire burning up Kinjin's cheeks. I don't know what you mean, Lady Hokage. Tsunade leaned in, placing her elbows on her desk as she folded her hands, resting her chin lightly. Oh, come on Kinjin. It's just us. You already know I like the brat and it's obvious Sasuke doesn't mind his little condition. If there's anybody who'd understand, it's us. Unconsciously, Kinjin licked his lips as his eyes flickered to Sasuke. Lady Tsunade. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. I've been around the block a time or two, it's hard not to see how handsome Naruto's become. All that tanned, toned skin and that sinfully blonde hair. But all that's nothing compared to those eyes. Oceans of blue sky. By now, Kinjin's eyes were rolling back into his head, a low moan echoing from deep in his throat as Tsunade's words brought forth a vision of a naked, god like Naruto. And, as Tsunade let her sentence trail off, Kinjin picked up the thread. And his skin, it's like liquid fur. Unable to stop himself, Kinjin's curiosity got the better of him. Sasuke-sama, did you notice that? Is his skin really that soft all over, or is it just his face? I wanted to feel, but it was all I could do to keep him still while I touched his face and neck. It was as if his mouth had a mind of its own, the words falling unbidden from Kinjin's lips as his desperate need for the blonde came home. When you're done with him, when you've taken everything you want, in exchange for my support in allowing him to be your concubine, could I have him, just for one night? Kami, but to have him, by now. Kinjin's eyes were clouded with lust as his tongue ran a thin, slick line over his lips. Tsunade found Sasuke's breaking point, and suddenly, the air crackled, hissing with electricity. Turning just in time, Kakashi saw the brilliant blue ball of light singing in Sasuke's hand, his eyes blood red with spinning wheels of black. Sasuke! Kakashi shouted, grabbing his arm. Let go of me, Kakashi. I'm going to Chidori his ass. He's dead. Fucking dead. Nothing more than a walking corpse. Kinjin took a terrifying step backwards, his brown eyes wide, only now glimpsing the error of his ways. Get him away from me. You can't kill me, I'm on the council. Like that makes any difference to me. You fucking piece of shit. How dare you speak Naruto's name, let alone in combination with your filthy thoughts. Uchiha, I'm doing you a favor. Can't you see that? The council will never agree to a marriage. By making Naruto an official concubine, you can still own him, still. Moron, I don't want to own Naruto. A loud bang startled all three out of their heated argument and all eyes turned towards the Hokage. Enough, Tsunade yelled as particles of drywall continued falling through the air from her fist making contact with the wall. Sasuke, stand down or I'll boot your ass out of this office. Sasuke sneered, you can't be serious. You heard what? Yes, obviously I heard it, but you killing a council member in the Hokage's office isn't going to do Naruto any favors. What he needs now is you. Uchiha Sasuke free, whole, and stable. Not Uchiha Sasuke the rogue nin. Unlike this jackass, I know how you feel about the brat. Don't let him down again. The crackling died down into nothing as the blue light faded from Sasuke's hand. Tsunade, he can't go unpunished. Please tell me he's going to pay for this. Pay for what? I've done nothing. Councilman Kinjin, I suggest you shut your fucking mouth before I turn a blind eye to whatever Sasuke and Kakashi have in mind. And, believe me, if you think Sasuke is your only mortal enemy in this room, you're sorely mistaken. Gulping loudly, Kinjin turned his eyes on Kakashi, only to cringe at the malice he found there. Trying to regain some of his lost composure, Kinjin squared his shoulders. As I said earlier, I'm a member of the council. You can't hurt me, and I assure you, this marriage will never be approved. Tsunade laughed, and this time his was pure pleasure. You know Kinjin, I always hated that stupid law about the elite families of the Leaf being able to name who they wanted to marry. As long as it was someone of a perceived lower clan, then they had no right to protest. As a matter of fact, it was a law both proposed and supported by the council. Given the fact that its members were all from the most highly regarded clans, it could only benefit them. So you see, this union will happen, and it will be very lawful. Sasuke is an Uchiha and as far as you are all concerned, Naruto is an Uzumaki with little to no clan affiliation. Sasuke put forth the request and it was accepted by the Hokage. There is nothing the council can do about it. Funny how those kinds of things can come back to bite you in the ass. We may not be able to block it fully, but the union will not have the support of the council. They will be shunned. Naruto's already used to that and somehow, I doubt Sasuke gives much of a damn about this village's opinion. A wicked grin crossed Tsunade's face. But that's beside the point, because the council is going to give their blessing. You're going to make sure they do. I will never. I've heard enough. Stay put, I'm not through with you yet. Turning towards Sasuke, Tsunade pulled out a scroll, furiously writing something down before rolling it up and sealing it with her official mark. Sasuke, I need you to take this with you. Why? Where am I going? Tsunade smirked. Why, to get back our little kitsune, of course. Sasuke felt his body unthaw as he slowly walked forwards, reaching out a hand and taking the offered scroll. And where am I taking it? Naruto's on his way to Suna. I sent him there with a similar scroll to give directly to Gaara. At the mention of the name, Sasuke stiffened and practically growled, you sent him to Gaara. Don't give me that look. It's somewhere I knew he'd be safe. Now, this is important, when the two of you get to Suna. You mean you still want us to go there after I find him? Glancing over at the councilman, Tsunade nodded. Yes, I want you both to stay in Suna until I send word for you to come home. I have a little house cleaning to do and I think it would be best if the two of you laid low until I'm done. Turning her attention back towards Sasuke, Tsunade's eyes became even more determined. Uchiha, bring him home whole, or don't come back at all. I never want to see Naruto's eyes like that again. Do you hear me? Sasuke nodded once and turned to leave. Oh, and one more thing, Sasuke. Naruto's fast. You need to be faster. If he gets to Suna before you. Well, let's just say that what I wrote in Naruto's scroll gives Gaara permission to treat you however he sees fit. Sasuke raised a single eyebrow, and what does it say in my scroll? Che, to disregard what it says in Naruto's of course. Smirking, Sasuke gave another quick nod in Tsunade and Kakashi's direction before glaring viciously at Councilman Kinjin. If you've ruined what I have with Naruto. Sasuke closed his eyes, willing what he'd just said not to be true. When he opened them again, Kinjin thought he was looking into the mouth of hell. Never, ever, touch him again. And then, without another word, Sasuke was gone. Turning her attention back to Kinjin, Tsunade smiled. Now, I think we need to discuss exactly what you're going to say to the rest of the council. Kinjin was furious. I don't know what power you think you have over me. What do you think the council will think when they hear about your little fetish regarding Naruto? Kinjin blushed darkly. They'll never believe anything you tell them. Everyone knows how you feel about the little demon carrier. You'd say anything to protect him. And Kakashi, would he lie as well? Without question. Both Uzumaki and Uchiha were once his students. No one would trust his word. Without prompting, and just as she thought they would, both Guy and Shikamaru came out of Shizun's office. Guy with a look of total disgust and Shika with a disgusted look of boredom. What? What's this? Yawning, Shikamaru looked at Tsunade. Hokage-sama, this mission turned out to be more troublesome than I originally thought. Guy crossed his arms across his chest. Troublesome? More like disgusting. For one man to show so little regard for the love of youth. And then for him to corrupt it to his own ends, could anyone sink lower? Kinjin practically growled. It will still be all of your word against my own. You have no proof, Shika? Tsunade asked, her voice almost as bored as Nara's. Pulling out a scroll from behind his back, Shikamaru lazily handed the object over to Tsunade. It started officially recording the minute Uchiha and Hitaki entered the room. I kept the jutsu going throughout. What is that? Kinjin asked, the first traces of fear lacing his voice. This? Tsunade waved the scroll in the air. Why, this is nothing but a piece of parchment, which Nara Shikamaru placed a truth jutsu on. The scroll automatically wrote down, word for precise word, what was said in this room over approximately the past half hour. The scroll is sealed and 100% accurate. The contents cannot be disputed. Kinjin stood, finally at a loss for words. And, if that's still not enough, I would wonder how you'll feel looking over your shoulder for the rest of your days. Having an Uchiha as an enemy is not conducive to a long life. Now, I believe we were going to discuss what you are going to say to the council. Sasanaru 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 Sasu. Naruto sailed through the trees, desperately keeping his mind blank. He'd only stopped momentarily at his home to change and gather his Junin supplies before leaving the Leaf Village behind. As with everything else in his life, asking the Hokage for a mission outside the village had been a snap decision, made with haste and the simple knowledge that if he didn't leave, there would be little of him left to piece back together. But unlike usual, Naruto kept his emotions buried deep inside, something any Uchiha would be proud of. Typically, he was as emotional as they came, rushing into action with little thought of the consequences. Over the years, he'd become more thoughtful, but still let his emotions rule his actions. It was one of the reasons he'd always been able to forgive Sasuke, no matter how deep the betrayal. Naruto had never held grudges, at least not if the person was apologetic, even if that apology was not verbally stated, somehow, he just knew. And in his mind, Sasuke's return to the village had been apology enough. He'd never asked for more, it had never even crossed his mind to seek one. But given what Councilman Kinjin had said, maybe Naruto should have questioned Sasuke more. Maybe his coming back to the village wasn't so much about wanting to come home as simply seeking more power. By now, Naruto knew why Sasuke had tried to kill him before. He knew all about the Mangekyo Sharingan and how that level was attained, and that Sasuke had gained such power after killing his own brother. No, Kinjin thought Sasuke had been after Naruto's power, not a way to increase an Uchiha's own birthright. In other words, some other way to use him. That certainly made a hell of a lot more sense than the Uchiha really caring for him. Slipping on a branch, Naruto barely managed to right himself before landing hard on the ground, eyes wide and breath coming in painful gasps. "Damn it," he mumbled, "focus Naruto, focus." But no matter how hard he tried, images of the previous night played through his head like a broken movie. How could one night change so many things? Kami, they hadn't even really done anything. All Sasuke had done was touch and hold him, and it had been the most wonderful feeling Naruto had ever experienced. After all the years of loneliness and pain, for the first time, he'd known what comfort was, and with that one taste, he knew he would always crave more. Kinjin was right, he'd do almost anything to feel that way again, even if it was false. Gripping the scroll tightly to his chest, Naruto placed a hand on a nearby tree, forcing his mind into a blank box, willing his emotions into a cavernless void. Concentrating on his breathing, he'd finally succeeded, opening his dead, blue eyes while looking up into the canopy above. Focusing his chakra back into his legs and feet, he was just getting ready to leap up when a shuriken swept past his face, digging into the tree he'd been using as a brace only moments before. Spinning, Naruto's empty eyes scanned the horizon, but his attacker wasn't trying to hide himself anymore, and soon a wave of Sasuke's chakra swept over his senses, almost knocking the blonde over with its intensity. Sasuke stared across the forest, willing his hurried breathing into submission. He'd pushed his body to the limits trying to get to Naruto, and here, at the edge of the forest, he just managed to catch his prey. But as Naruto turned, Sasuke's heart squeezed in pain. Tsunade'd been right. Naruto's eyes were anything but normal, they were dead. Devoid of any emotion. Kami, the color might be different, but Sasuke knew that look, for years he'd seen it every time he gazed into a reflective surface. Those eyes had no place on his dobi. Swallowing hard, Sasuke took a tentative step forward. "Naruto? Sasuke." A shiver went down Sasuke's spine at the coldness in that voice. "We need to talk. We'll talk later. I'm currently on a mission, and you're interrupting." Sasuke shook his head. "No, we're going to talk now. I thought you said you were going to come and see me later today, not ask for a mission outside the village." "I said I'd try and see you. Not that I would." "True." Sasuke stood, hating the awkward silence, but unsure what to say. Suddenly, Naruto's mouth turned into a bitter sneer, but not even that emotion met his eyes. "Sasuke, did you come all this way simply because I didn't come to see you? Che, I'd have thought you'd have a little more confidence in yourself." Sasuke felt his back stiffen. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto's dead emotions were firing back to life, but they were twisted with pain. 48 hours. That has to be some kind of record, even for you. Motionless, Sasuke stood his ground. Although he knew he'd hate the words Naruto was about to say, he desperately needed to know what the blonde was thinking. It was the only way Sasuke could see to undo the damage Kinjin had done. 48 fucking hours. That's all it took. Naruto found his voice choking on the words, his own disbelief reverberating with every breath. Taking another step forward, Sasuke whispered, "Naruto. Stop, don't you dare come any closer. I've already let you get close enough." Sasuke froze, his body and face a mask of calm. Inside, his heart was sinking. "Naruto, I know you spoke with Kinjin. I have a pretty good idea what he said, or more to the point, what he implied." "Implied? Hell, is that what you just said? That asshole didn't imply anything. No, what he did was lay it all out there. Every sick and twisted motive the both of you have regarding me and Kyuubi. Do not compare me with that sick fuck." Sasuke's voice fell to a deadly low. How on earth Naruto could even think they were alike was beyond him. No, why not? Naruto knew he was treading on dangerous ground. Knew the warning signs Sasuke was emitting. Knew that if he didn't stop, he'd soon be bleeding. And yet, at that moment, he could have cared less. In fact, the physical pain would be a welcome relief from the emotional ones racking his body. Sasuke was furious. "Let's get one thing straight, Dobi. Wanting to marry you has nothing to do with gaining more power, at least not in the way Kinjin thinks." Naruto shook his head furiously. "You don't think I know that?" Sasuke's anger dissipated into confusion. "You do? I don't. I know you already have the Mangekyo Sharingan. I'm not a complete and total idiot. Nothing that sick and powerful could ever come from any other method besides death." Narrowing his eyes, Naruto glared at Sasuke, "And that includes fucking me." Sasuke felt a hissing intake of breath. Naruto's words were disturbing enough without the added cynicism in his voice. Taking a calming breath, Sasuke was desperately trying to figure out what was wrong. If Naruto already knew he wasn't after him for more power, then why was he so Kami? Sasuke didn't know what Naruto was. One word didn't seem to do the blonde justice. Naruto, if you already know Kinjin's lying. Oh, he's not lying, Sasuke. Letting out a cold laugh, Naruto turned, hands on hips as he stared blankly at the tree behind him. No, he's more right than he knows. Naruto, I don't understand. And just like that, Naruto felt all the hate leave his body, taking his resolve with it. Those few simple words, spoken with a softness no one would believe an Uchiha capable of. That's all it took. Shaking his head, Naruto leaned against the tree, knowing he was screwed beyond measure. Sighing, he laid his forehead against the harsh bark of the trunk, his voice barely audible. 48 hours, Sasuke. You keep saying that, but I don't understand. That's all it took for you to turn me into this. Naruto, I let you touch me. Hold me, make me feel like I was special to someone. No longer alone. Kami, did that feel good? No, good isn't a big enough word for it. I don't think there is a single word that could describe how I felt last night. And, for a brief time, I let myself believe it. Let myself think I could have that. But it was a lie. Unconsciously, Sasuke's feet had started moving until he was only a few feet away from Naruto's back. It wasn't a lie. Maybe you're right. Maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe that's the problem. Don't you see, Sasuke, in the end, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter to me if all you want me for is to somehow increase your power. It should, but it doesn't. You could stand there and tell me you're simply using me, that all I am to you is a means to an end. But, if in that same breath, you told me you'd hold me like you did last night, that you'd keep me close, that you'd never leave me. Even if all of it was a lie, I'd let you do it. I'd let you use my body, my soul. I'd give you everything I had and in the process give up everything I am just to be used by you. Letting out a choking sob, Naruto let his body sag to the forest floor. How sick is that? What the fuck is wrong with me? Sasuke reached out a hand, watching the appendage shake as his pale fingers stretched to touch Naruto's shoulder, almost recoiling as his whole body stiffened and flinched away at the slight contact. In his mind, Sasuke was going through every sick and twisted way he was going to torture Nagata Kinjin. By the time he was done, Kinjin would be nothing but a bleeding, sobbing mass, begging for death. How in the hell did he even begin to make this better? Watching the quaking form of the person he held most dear in his life, Sasuke's resolve grew. This was not what Naruto was supposed to be. Although it had taken him a long time to see, Sasuke knew he and Naruto were stronger together than they ever would be apart. If he'd only figured that out sooner, he could have saved them both from a mountain of pain. They both needed to stop wasting time. Steadying his hand, Sasuke placed the full weight of it on Naruto's shoulder, gripping tighter when Naruto tried pulling away. And, when he spoke, his voice was soft but strong. He didn't want there to be any doubt left in his Dobi's mind when this was over. Are you done? Naruto's body stiffened, but he said nothing. I'll take that as a yes. Now, I want you to listen to me and more than that, I want you to hear what I'm saying. Nod once if you understand. Sasuke saw Naruto's blonde hair sway, his head barely moving, but it was enough. Do you know why I came back? Not really. No? See, this is what I mean about you listening, but not hearing me. I told you last night. Now, what did I say? Naruto's voice was whisper soft. T that you see came back for Emmy. See, you do know why. Now, do you know why I came back for you? Naruto shook his head, causing Sasuke to sigh. Well, I would have hoped you'd have figured it out by now, but given our past history, I can't say that I exactly blame you, although, I have been throwing out some pretty big hints. At this, Sasuke saw a blush creeping up Naruto's neck and silently smirked. Just to be clear, being with you does give me more power. Naruto's body went rigid. But, it's not the way you're thinking. Naruto, being with you gives me the power to live in a world I thought I'd never be able to accept. I meant it when I said the whole village could burn, as long as you're not there when it happens. You are the only thing left that I care about. Whether my eyes are closed or open makes little difference, all I see is darkness. But you chase away the shadows. You make me see the light in this world. You mend all my broken pieces and for the first time since my clan was slaughtered, I feel whole. Fewer cracks mean I can better withstand all the ugly, manipulative forces that are still out there. You keep me grounded. You give me someone to come back to. You keep me sane. And you, Uzumaki Naruto, make me feel something I thought I was incapable of. You make me feel love. Staring down at the top of Naruto's golden head, Sasuke used all his senses trying to get a hold of Naruto's reaction to his words, but there was nothing. An all-consuming void of emptiness. Even the surrounding forest was silent. Going down on his knees, Sasuke wrapped his arms around Naruto's stiff form. "Dobi, did you hear what I said?" Naruto remained unyielding in his arms and Sasuke felt his panic rising. "Naruto, I heard you." The voice was flat, empty. Sasuke let his forehead drop, resting it between Naruto's shoulder blades. "Please, tell me you believe me. Why does it matter? I've already told you I do whatever you asked of me. Why do you care if I think you love me or not?" Jerking his head up, Sasuke pulled his arms back, grabbing Naruto by the shoulders and forcefully spinning him around to stare into his icy blue eyes. "Idiot, do you really think that's how I want you? A mindless puppet hanging on my every word and action." Growling, Sasuke couldn't stand the bored look on Naruto's face. Pulling back his arm, Sasuke's fist made harsh contact with Naruto's jaw, knocking him backwards. If not for Sasuke's opposite hand still gripping his shoulder, Naruto would have been lying flat on his back. Instead, his face bobbed forward, a trickle of blood leaking down from the corner of his mouth. "Bastard," Naruto hissed, his eyes cold with fury. That's better," Sasuke smirked. "Better for who, asshole? Because my face sure as hell doesn't feel any better." "Maybe not, but it looks better." Naruto's mouth dropped open, ignoring the pain it caused his jaw. "You sadistic freak. You think my face bleeding is an improvement? In this case, yes. At least I got a reaction out of you instead of that icy mask you were wearing." Naruto's mouth snapped shut, his eyes searching the ones in front of him. "But that's the way you look all the time." "Exactly, that's the way I look, not you. Never you, Sasuke." But Sasuke only shook his head. "Never, ever say something like that to me again." "Do you hear me? I don't understand." Sasuke was near to shaking with utter frustration. "Argue, scream, fight, beat me to a bloody pulp. Truly, I don't care, but never, ever play placid for me. Are you really so stupid as to think that's what I'd want?" Naruto couldn't meet Sasuke's eyes and found himself staring into his lap. "I don't know." Sasuke was incredulous. "What do you mean, you don't know?" Anger began flooding through Naruto's veins, and he welcomed it like an old friend. "Bastard, how in the hell am I supposed to know what you want? I mean, why would you ever claim to love someone like me?" "What, me? Nobody loves me just for me. Nobody. So why in the hell would you?" Sasuke stared into Naruto's obviously pissed face and saw something hiding beneath it, sincere confusion. Kami, but Sakura was right, Naruto had no idea just how precious he was. Letting go of Naruto's shoulders, he reached up, cupping Naruto's whiskered cheeks between the palms of his hands. "Naruto, there are a lot of people who love you." Naruto tried to look away, but Sasuke's hands kept his face still. "Che, right, how could they?" Sasuke sighed. "Am I going to have to make you a list?" Silence. "Sakura loves you." "No, Sakura-chan loves Lee. She loves you as a friend." Naruto's hands were fidgeting. "I don't know. I do. Okay, maybe that's one." As he said the words, Sasuke could feel Naruto's body finally relax. His eyes were still lowered, but he could tell the blonde was thinking about his words. Easing the pressure in his hands, Sasuke began rubbing small circles with his thumbs over Naruto's cheeks. "Do you know who else loves you?" Naruto gave the barest headshake between Sasuke's hands. "No? How about Hokage-sama? Ba-chan? I don't think." "Yes, Naruto. If you'd been in her office a few hours ago, you'd have seen her love in action." Naruto's eyes came up, looking genuinely concerned. "Why? What did she do?" "We'll talk about it later," was all Sasuke muttered before continuing. "Kakashi, Kiba, Shikamaru, Choji, Lee, Tenten, Hinata, hell, even Neji loves you in his own way. And that's saying nothing regarding what you meant to Jiraiya." At the last name, tears began pooling in Naruto's eyes as he whispered, "Ero Sennin." And those are just to name a few. In his mind, Sasuke refused to mention Gaara's name, and he sure as hell wasn't about to bring up Sai at a moment like this. Leaning in, Sasuke let his lips ghost over Naruto's cheeks, gently pressing skin against skin, pulling back only enough to speak into his ear. But none of them, and I mean none of them, love you as much as I do. Do you hear me? With those last words, Naruto felt Sasuke's teeth gently graze his earlobe and soon a low moan escaped his traitorous lips. No one, Sasuke breathed, pushing warm air against Naruto's lips before leaning in that last fraction of an inch and melding their lips together. Tilting his head back with a throaty moan, Naruto thought he'd slipped into some sort of alternate reality, because, make no mistake, things like this just didn't happen in the world in which he resided. Over the past few years he'd earned the respect of most of the other shinobi and even managed to win over a population of villagers. But they had been hard-fought battles, and more often than not, his body and soul had been the casualties of that war. And now, sitting on his knees on the edge of the forest ringing the village hidden in the leaves, the deadliest, most beautiful creature in the world was covering his mouth with the most sinful lips ever placed on a human being. And not only were those precious lips pressing against his own, but Sasuke's tongue was gently licking, begging for entrance. Groaning, Naruto did the only thing his fuzzy mind could. He opened his mouth, allowing Sasuke full access to a part of his body he'd assumed no one would ever enter. Inching his hands up, Sasuke felt his fingers tangle within Naruto's golden hair, pulling not only his head, but his whole body up into closer contact. Easing one of his hands free, Sasuke began running it down Naruto's back, feeling the blonde's quaking body. Kami, but it felt like he was trying to hold on to an earthquake. Pulling back from the kiss, Sasuke stared down into Naruto's half-lidded eyes and swollen red lips. His voice breathless, Sasuke asked, "Naruto, are you okay?" What? You're shaking. Are you okay? Do you want me to stop? Stop? Yeah, moron, Sasuke said teasingly, you're shaking like a damn leaf. Pulling back, Naruto felt his reason crash, his eyes narrowing to slits. Bastard, are you making fun of me? Sasuke shook his head. Idiot, I finally have you, I don't want to scare you off. Who said I was scared? Damn it, Naruto. This isn't a competition. If I'm going to fast and you're not comfortable, then say something. Reaching forward, Naruto grabbed the front of Sasuke's Jonin vest, pulling their bodies together. Teme, don't you dare stop. Not now, not ever. Sasuke's eyes opened wide, his nearly invisible pupils dilating into his black irises with lust and need. Smirking, he grabbed Naruto's shoulders, eliminating the fragile distance between their two bodies. Don't stop? Never. Do you understand what you're asking for? Blinking rapidly, Naruto felt like his brain just might explode, that is, if his cock didn't first. Did he really understand what he was telling Sasuke? If he were truthful with himself, the answer was probably no. But what he did understand was the need building within his body. The desire to be loved, to be touched in ways he'd barely allowed himself to fantasize about, and to have the person doing those things be Sasuke. Feeling a shiver run down his spine, Naruto stared into endless black orbs and nearly choked out his response, please. I need to feel you. I want. Sasuke's hand drifted through Naruto's hair, his thumb dipping down to rub contentedly along the edge of a tanned earlobe. Tell me, what do you want? Naruto nearly groaned. I don't know. I just want you. Where do you want me? Taking in a hissing breath, Naruto whispered, everywhere. Shit. Sasuke's eyelids closed, feeling the weight of that one word echo its way throughout his entire body. When Sasuke's eyes opened again, the Sharingan was spinning and Naruto's own eyes widened in response. Sasuke? Dobi, I want to remember everything. The way you are right now. The look in your eyes, the set of your lips, the way your skin looks under my hands. Pervert, Naruto grinned. Not yet, but soon. Before Naruto had time to utter a single response, Sasuke's lips were moving, his tongue plundering Naruto's mouth with astonishing speed, finally breaking away when both thought they might pass out from lack of oxygen. Staring into Naruto's now deeper blue eyes, Sasuke knew he had only a few moments of reason left to his ever-dwindling self-control, and before that final cord snapped, he needed to make sure they were safe. Safe from wondering eyes, safe from wayward travelers, safe from unwanted attention from the village itself. And so, pulling his hands briefly from Naruto's soft golden spikes, Sasuke made the hand seals necessary to put up a proper genjutsu. Now, anyone walking by would notice, Nothing. Absolutely nothing but the continuous green of the local nature. Two ninja pleasantly screwing each other's brains out wouldn't even be a blip on their radar. Never one to be particularly good at the art of genjutsu, Naruto asked. So, what are people going to see? Nothing but the local shrubbery. And what, pray tell, will they hear? Naruto questioned, a mischievous glint in his eyes as one hand wormed its way into Sasuke's black locks while the other drifted further and further south, finally rubbing against Sasuke's clothed erection. Sucking in a deep breath, Sasuke answered, nothing but nature at its finest. Naruto barely had time to break into a large grin at Sasuke's rare attempt at a joke before his lips were captured once again. Sasuke wasting little time diving his tongue deep into Naruto's waiting cavern, pulling moans and groans out of each of them. Sounds both would have once claimed impossible. Sass, Kami. Naruto could barely make a coherent thought, let alone verbalize it. Fuck Naruto. I can't wait to be inside you. Sasuke practically purred, his voice low and heady as he practically ripped the jacket from Naruto's body, quickly followed by the black fishnet top below. Running pale hands across tanned, toned abs, Sasuke felt his cock throb with need, pushing painfully against his ever-tightening pants. So warm, so fucking beautiful. I'm going to ride you into oblivion. Leaning forward, Naruto took one of Sasuke's earlobes into his mouth, biting and sucking on it while smirking at Sasuke's words. Teme, you always were a little too full of yourself. It's not being boastful when it's true, Sasuke goaded. Asshole, it's impossible to be that great at everything. Pulling back, Sasuke cupped Naruto's face in his slender fingers, both his eyes and mouth looking nothing short of devious. Oh silly Dobi. But I am great at everything. Especially this, and without further warning, Naruto felt Sasuke's warm fingers delve below the waistline of his pants and boxers, those wicked fingers wrapping around his cock in the most tantalizing of ways. Shit, was all Naruto had energy to say as his blue eyes rolled back into his head, his breathing coming out in ragged gulps. Dobi, I think this part of you agrees with me. Regaining a bit of sanity, Naruto's eyes narrowed, bastard. But the word held little sting as his panting and groans escalated in both pitch and intensity. Reaching up, all Naruto could do was grab onto Sasuke's shoulders, his grip close to bruising. "Aw, sass, I'm gonna." Pulling his hand out, Sasuke thought the gasp Naruto gave was one close to pain. What the hell? But Sasuke was already working on his own clothes, his shirt thrown into a nearby bush while his pants and boxers were sliding down pale hips, making the blush on Naruto's face deepen at the sight of Sasuke's deep red cock standing at full attention, the head rising up to gently graze his abdomen. Feeling exceedingly pleased at the look on Naruto's face, not to mention where those blue eyes zeroed in on, Sasuke made quick work of relieving himself completely of his clothes. Now, to do the same to Naruto. Reaching up with lightning speed, Sasuke grabbed Naruto by the shoulders, pulling him up onto his knees while he quickly unbuttoned his pants and began pulling both them and Naruto's boxers down until they hit his bent knees. With a none too gentle shove, Sasuke pushed Naruto onto his back, ignoring the indignant sounds of protest as he stripped his blonde of all remaining clothing impediments. With both of them finally in such a fine state of nakedness, Sasuke straddled Naruto's hips, grinding both their hard cocks against each other as he leaned down, capturing Naruto's lips in yet another bone-crushing kiss. Sass. Naruto panted as Sasuke pulled away. Grinding harshly down on Naruto's crotch, Sasuke's breathy voice flitted across Naruto's overly sensitive skin. Feel good, Dobi? Kami, more than GG good. Want to feel even better? Fuck, why yes. For once Naruto, you have the right idea. Hey. But Naruto never finished scolding Sasuke because just as the words were forming on his lips, one of Sasuke's saliva-covered fingers entered his hole, completely stealing his breath. Smirking, Sasuke pushed said digit in further, easing it in and out in a smooth rhythm. So this is what it takes to shut you up. Jackass. Probably, Sasuke answered as he shoved in a second finger, only to hear Naruto hiss in response. Leaning down, Sasuke placed feather-light kisses along Naruto's jaw. Shish, I promise, it'll feel good soon. But what Sasuke failed to understand was, that although he was right on some levels, it wasn't the physical pain which was affecting Naruto, but the emotional one. the turbulent sea known as one's own feelings. Because, despite the fact that having Sasuke's fingers up his ass was indeed uncomfortable, Naruto was lost in a world of fear and euphoria. Fear that this was all a dream, and euphoria at the thought that it might actually be real. He could take the physical pain involved. Hell, all it did was prove to him that this was actually happening. So, even though it wasn't ideal, Naruto welcomed the stinging sensation with open arms. And perhaps that, more than anything else, explained why he answered Sasuke by saying, "It already feels good," even though physically, it didn't. At least, not yet. Knowing none of this, Sasuke merely thought that just like in every other situation, Kyuubi's gift of healing was speeding up the process. And, given this way of thinking, he saw no reason not to insert a third finger, stretching the man he loved even further, never fully understanding that he did the right thing for all the wrong reasons. Hooking his fingers around, Sasuke searched for that one area he knew would send Naruto into the next universe. He could only hope that despite being the fox's vessel, most, if not all of Naruto's anatomy was the same as any other human. Surely, fate wouldn't be so cruel as to not include this little piece of blissful sin. And, for once, it seemed the universe was on their side as Naruto's back arched, his toes curling in exquisite bliss as Sasuke's fingertips glanced over his prostate. "Oh, Kami," Naruto moaned. And that was all it took. Knowing he couldn't hold out hearing such sounds, Sasuke withdrew his fingers and swiftly lined his pained erection up with Naruto's now twitching and eager hole. Grabbing tanned hips, Sasuke pushed himself inside, going in deep and fast on his very first thrust, lifting the blonde up and sitting him on his lap as he dove in. Sitting on Sasuke's lap, a cock shoved deep into his eager ass, Naruto's fingers gripped his lover's shoulders, his fingernails sinking into practically flawless skin. Not enough to draw blood, but enough to leave red marks and perhaps some light bruising. With his head resting on Sasuke's shoulder, Naruto's nose burrowed into a pallid neck, inhaling the sweet and yet bitter smell of the person he'd come to love most in this world. His breathing uneven, Naruto barely heard Sasuke's whispered words of concern, "Dobi. Naruto, you okay? I thought you were going to ride me into oblivion," Naruto growled. "Forgive me for being concerned," Sasuke scoffed. "You're forgiven. Now, make good on your words." Rarely, if ever, did Sasuke take kindly to being ordered to do anything. But he thought maybe, in this instance, he might have to make an exception. Reaching down, Sasuke grabbed Naruto's ass, pulling his body up and slamming it down as he drove his pulsing cock upwards. A harsh hissing sound blown across his neck was his instant reward. "Don't blame me when you can't walk. Let me worry about my B-body. Just shut up and fuck me, asshole." With pleasure, Sasuke smirked as he leaned forward, forcing Naruto onto his back while hooking tanned legs over his own shoulders. Pulling out, Sasuke barely left the head of his cock inside its newfound warm home while staring down into Naruto's lust-crazed eyes, his own still spinning with the Sharingan. Throwing his hips forward, Sasuke impaled himself into Naruto's tight ass, his dark words spilling into the forest. "Mine? Pull out, thrust, now, out, thrust, and out, thrust, forever, out, thrust, understand?" Pulling out once again, Sasuke held himself back, forcing Naruto's hazy eyes to focus in on his own. Still unsure if he had the blonde's full attention, Sasuke leaned forwards, his hands braced on either side of Naruto's face. "Do you hear that, Dobi? Me, only me." In answer, Naruto hooked his feet onto Sasuke's back, pulling both himself up while yanking his lover's hips forward, once again burying Sasuke deep within himself, earning a moaned, "Fuck, Naruto," for his efforts. With the bastard firmly where he wanted him, Naruto leaned up, his mouth inches away from Sasuke's ear as he whispered, "As if I'd want anyone else, Teme." Feeling Sasuke smirk against his neck, Naruto barely had time to smile himself before Sasuke pulled out, leaving only his tip sheathed before violently snapping his hips forwards once again, hitting Naruto's prostate with uncanny accuracy. Arching his back, Naruto barely noticed as Sasuke lowered him back onto the ground, lifting his legs further up, doubling over his body as the pale god continued pounding into his eager body. So fucking good. Barely managing to form words, Sasuke's rhythm was becoming erratic, and Naruto's constant groans and grunts of pleasure weren't helping matters in the least. Reaching up a hand, Sasuke began stroking Naruto's cock, its swollen length near to bursting as he whispered, "Come, Naruto. Come for me now. Sass. Oh. Kami." Closing his eyes, Naruto's vision exploded in a constellation of stars as he came hard. Sasuke's hand milking his cock as his own erupted in Naruto's tight ass, overfilling what little space remained. Falling, Sasuke barely had time to place his shaking hands on either side of Naruto's head, barely keeping himself from landing harshly on his lover's body. "Shit, Naruto. Why in the hell didn't we do that sooner?" Naruto's face split into a wide grin. "I don't know, Teme, probably due to your asshole-ish nature." Smirking, Sasuke leaned down, kissing Naruto's swollen lips as he mumbled, "Perhaps." As Sasuke rolled off to lay next to his lover, Naruto felt him slip out of his ass, soon followed by Sasuke's cum leaking down his crack and onto the forest floor below. Somewhere, in the back of his mind, he thought maybe he should find that a little disgusting, but he didn't. Instead, it made him feel like he belonged to Sasuke. Oh, he'd never admit that. Even if tortured to the edge of insanity, he'd never in a billion years fess up to the fact that he liked feeling owned. Never in his life had he ever felt wanted, protected or needed. But feeling that warm, sticky fluid slowly leaking down his skin, made him feel all those things and more. And so, with a contented sigh, Naruto rolled over, placing a tanned cheek against a pale chest, listening to the slowing heart rate of the one he held most dear. Feeling Sasuke, hand raking through his hair, Naruto's eyelids began dropping, his breath coming in even rhythm. "Naruto? Sasuke had an evil smirk. "So, do you still think I was boasting? About what?" Black eyebrows shot up. "About my abilities, idiot. Teme. Shut the hell up, I'm sleepy." As golden blonde hair continued coursing through Sasuke's fingers, his smirk turned into a small smile. "I'll take that as a yes. Whatever. Naruto. What now? Love you." Sasuke felt Naruto's lips curve up along the muscles of his chest, his Dobi's breath ghosting across his sensitive skin as he answered, "Love you too."
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.